Chapter 1, Starting as a Father and Receiving a 10,000-Fold Return System. At the gate of Shanghai University, Chen Hao dragged a worn-out suitcase, preparing to walk into the school. Having not seen them for a summer vacation, he missed his dorm buddies quite a bit and was planning to quickly share the local specialties he brought from his hometown with them. Chen Hao. A clear, crisp female voice, tinged with an indescribable emotion, came from behind him. Chen Hao paused. That voice, he knew it all too well. In the class, and even throughout the entire college, everyone recognized the owner of that voice. He turned around, somewhat incredulous. Sure enough, it was Zhang Xueyao. Zhang Xueyao wore a simple white dress today, which made her skin look even whiter. The sunlight shone on her, and she seemed to be glowing. She's the undisputed campus belle of Shanghai University. She's academically gifted, beautiful, and most importantly, her father is the second richest man in Shanghai. Zhang Xueyao and Chen Hao, a poor student from the countryside who relied on scholarships and part-time jobs to make a living, are practically from two different worlds. In class, Chen Hao, as the class monitor and always ranked first in his major, inevitably had some contact with Zhang Xueyao, who was the academic representative, but it was all limited to discussing studies or class work. Zhang Xueyao is polite to everyone, but she also carries a natural sense of distance. At this moment, the school beauty walked straight towards Chen Hao, her pretty face showing a complex expression, a mix of shyness, nervousness, and a seemingly resolute determination. She stopped in front of Chen Hao. Zhang Xueyao? Is something the matter? Chen Hao asked somewhat awkwardly, his hand unconsciously tightening its grip on the suitcase handle. Zhang Xueyao looked around to make sure no one was nearby, took a deep breath, as if summoning all her courage, raised her head, and looked directly at Chen Hao with her clear eyes. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough. Chen Hao, I'm pregnant with your child. WH? What? Chen Hao's mind went blank, as if he had been hit hard by something. His eyes widened instantly, his mouth opened slightly, and he froze on the spot, completely losing his ability to think. A summer vacation has passed? A child? The school beauty? His? He understood each word individually, but when Zhang Xueyao said them together, he couldn't understand a single one. What did you just say? Chen Hao thought he must be hallucinating, or that he had overworked himself at home during the summer vacation. I said, I'm pregnant with your child. Zhang Xueyao repeated herself, her tone more determined than before, but two blushes involuntarily rose on her cheeks. Chen Hao heard it clearly this time, and every word felt like a hammer blow to his heart. He glanced around frantically, making sure no one was around, then looked back at Zhang Xueyao and stammered in a low voice. No, Zhang Xueyao, how could this be? You. He was rambling incoherently, his mind a complete mess. He just went back to his hometown for summer vacation. Every day, he did farm work and studied. How did he become a father as soon as he came back? Or is the school beauty pregnant with his child? This is 1,000,000 times more outrageous than a pie falling from the sky. How could Zhang Xueyao possibly be interested in him? Also, it seems he didn't have sex with Zhang Xueyao, so how did Zhang Xueyao end up with his child? Seeing Chen Hao's incredulous, even somewhat frightened expression, Zhang Xueyao frowned slightly, her tone carrying a hint of barely perceptible grievance and questioning. Chen Hao, what kind of reaction is this? Don't you want to take responsibility? Take responsibility? No. I absolutely do not mean I don't want to take responsibility. Chen Hao was so frightened that he waved his hands repeatedly and shook his head like a rattledrum. Although Chen Hao was poor, his parents taught him from a young age to be upright and responsible. If this is true, he definitely won't renege on his debt. But he looked at Zhang Xueyao with a pained expression, a mixture of confusion and anxiety. I just completely don't understand what's going on. How did this child come into this world? When did we? He was too embarrassed to say what he was going to say next, and his face turned bright red. Seeing that he was so anxious that his forehead was almost sweating, and that he didn't seem to be pretending to be stupid, Zhang Xueyao's expression softened slightly. She prompted, Do you remember the class reunion we organized at the end of our sophomore year, the night we finished our last exam? Chen Hao and Zhang Xueyao are classmates. Chen Hao is a top student who got into Shanghai University from the countryside through hard work. His grades have always been the best in the class, while Zhang Xueyao usually ranks second. Chen Hao certainly remembered that gathering. He nodded quickly. I remember, of course I remember. That happened before the holiday. Do you remember how you left the hotel that night? Zhang Shuiao asked again, her eyes fixed on him. How did you leave? Chen Hao was taken aback for a moment, then looked somewhat embarrassed and honestly shook his head. I really don't remember. I remember I drank too much that night, and I think I even blacked out. When I woke up, I found myself in a hotel room, and I wondered who had brought me there. He found it strange at the time, but didn't think much of it, assuming that some kind classmate had taken care of him, and was even grateful. Hearing Chen Hao say he didn't remember, Zhang Shuiao's face turned even redder. She lowered her head slightly, her voice becoming barely audible, filled with obvious shyness. That night, I saw that you were so drunk that you couldn't even stand up, and most of the other classmates were also staggering, so I took you to a nearby hotel and booked a room for you. Chen Hao listened blankly, his heart skipped a beat, and a bizarre guess began to form in his mind. Zhang Shuiao paused for a moment, as if what she was about to say required even more courage. Her voice lowered as she spoke. And then, I had sex with you. What? Chen Hao was struck dumb, completely petrified on the spot, his mind blank. But at that moment, perhaps Zhang Shuiao's words touched a deep-seated nerve, and some extremely blurry and fragmented images actually surfaced in his chaotic mind. That night, he slept fitfully, feeling hot all over, as if he had a particularly vivid and enchanting erotic dream. In my dream, there was a woman with a blurry figure, her long hair flowing down, carrying a faint fragrance. She seemed to be riding on top of him, and then some indescribable scenes. At the time, he thought it was just an erotic dream that came to him during his adolescence. When he woke up, he blushed slightly and found that his clothes were intact, which made him even more convinced that it was just a dream. Could it not be a dream? The blurry figure riding on top of him, having sex with him, was that Zhang Shuiao? Chen Hao felt his worldview had been turned upside down. He stared at the shy and beautiful school beauty in front of him, unable to utter a single word for a long time. It took him a while to recover from the shock, but he still felt that this was too outrageous and unbelievable. He licked his dry lips, struggling to organize his thoughts. But Zhang Shuiao, even if we really did that night, it's impossible for her to get pregnant so easily, right? Isn't this probability a bit too high? Although he wasn't a biology student, he still had basic physiological knowledge. Winning on the first try? This is just too lucky. The moment he raised this reasonable question, a series of crystal clear, emotionless electronic notification sounds rang out unexpectedly deep within his mind. Ding! Host bloodline continuation confirmed. Congratulations on becoming a father. Zhang Shuiao is indeed carrying your child. Congratulations! You have awakened the 10000X return system. System main function: gain experience and a skill through learning or practice, and the system will reward you with 110,000 times the experience. System binding in progress. Binding successful. Chen Hao was completely stunned. Chapter 2: The Envy, Jealousy, and Hatred of the Richest Man's Son. Before I could fully process the shock of Zhang Shuiao's words, "I'm pregnant with your child," a system notification suddenly popped into my head. Chen Hao was completely stunned, standing there stiffly with a blank stare and a slightly open mouth, looking like a statue. Chen Hao! Chen Hao! Seeing that he didn't react for a long time and just stared blankly at her, Zhang Shuiao felt a chill in her heart. She finally mustered the courage to tell the truth, only to be met with his incredulous, perhaps even unwilling, silence. A wave of grievance and shame washed over her, and her eyes reddened slightly. She bit her lower lip, her voice trembling slightly, and said defiantly, If you still don't believe me, then just pretend I never said anything. I'm leaving." After saying that, she turned around abruptly, as if to leave. That silhouette conveyed a sense of resolute determination and loneliness. Just as she turned around, Chen Hao was jolted awake from the shock of the so-called 10,000-fold return system. Seeing that Zhang Shuiao was about to leave, he almost instinctively reached out and grabbed Zhang Shuiao's slender arm. Etc. Chen Hao's voice sounded somewhat hoarse from his urgency. Zhang Shuiao paused, pulled by him, but did not turn around immediately. Her shoulders just tensed slightly. Chen Hao took a deep breath, his mind still buzzing. Child? System? Either of these two things would be enough for him to digest for 3 days and 3 nights. But at this moment, looking at Zhang Shuiao's aggrieved back, he chose to believe the voice that had inexplicably appeared in his mind. The system wouldn't lie to him, would it? Moreover, Zhang Shuiao is a girl, a school beauty, and comes from a wealthy family. How could she possibly risk her innocence and reputation to make such a joke? He gently turned Zhang Shuiao around to face him, his hand applying slight pressure. Looking at her slightly reddened eyes, he said with unusual certainty, "I believe you. Zhang Shuiao, I believe what you said." Zhang Shuiao suddenly raised her head, her beautiful eyes still moist, but now filled with unbelievable surprise. "Really? You really believe me?" She was afraid she had misheard. Chen Hao nodded emphatically, looking at her with sincere eyes. "Really? I believe you, and I believe that child is mine." At this moment, all the grievances and worries seemed to have found an outlet. Zhang Shuiao's face instantly blossomed into an incredibly bright and radiant smile, a smile more dazzling than the sun, filled with the joy of regaining what was lost and an indescribable excitement. Without even thinking, she stepped forward, opened her arms, and threw herself into Chen Hao's arms, hugging him tightly. "That's great. Chen Hao. Thank you for believing in me." She buried her face in Chen Hao's chest, which wasn't broad but was quite sturdy, her voice muffled but filled with a relieved joy. Chen Hao was so taken aback by her sudden embrace that he froze completely. The faint fragrance of her hair lingered around his nose, and in his arms was a soft, supple, and elastic body, the touch incredibly real. His heart suddenly raced, pounding as if it were about to leap out of his chest. My hands hung awkwardly in mid-air, completely unsure of what to do, feeling uncomfortable no matter where I put them. This was the first time in his life that a girl had hugged him like this, and it was Zhang Shuiao, the school beauty he had only ever dared to admire from afar. Sensing his stiffness and disorientation, Zhang Shuiao moved slightly in his arms, holding him tighter, as if afraid he would run away. Chen Hao could clearly feel the temperature of her body and her slight trembling. He hesitated for a moment, and finally, as if he had made up his mind, he awkwardly and gently placed his hands, which were slightly calloused from working in the fields, on Zhang Shuiao's back and carefully hugged her back. The moment his warm palm touched her back, Zhang Shuiao's body seemed to relax, and she let out a barely audible, satisfied sigh, nestling more comfortably in his arms. In the distance, several boys, clearly from other classes, who were about to enter the school gate, happened to witness this amazing scene of the goddess throwing herself into his arms, and their jaws nearly dropped to the ground in shock. Holy crap! Am I seeing things? That's Zhang Shuiao, the school beauty? It really is her. She actually hugged that guy on her own initiative? Who's that kid? He's dressed so plainly, what's his major? I've never seen him before. School beauty Zhang is already taken? My heart is broken. I'm so envious. Who's that guy? The group discussed amongst themselves, their faces filled with shock, envy, and intense jealousy. The aloof goddess in their hearts, the dream girl of countless boys, actually took the initiative to throw herself into the arms of a seemingly ordinary boy at the school gate on the first day of the new semester. This is absolutely the most explosive news from Shanghai universities this year. Just as Chen Hao and Zhang Shuiao were immersed in this delicate and warm atmosphere, a discordant, angry male voice suddenly shattered the brief tranquility. "Chen Hao, let Shuiao go right now." The voice was loud and aggressive, carrying undisguised hostility. Chen Hao and Zhang Shuiao were both startled by the sudden reprimand. They almost simultaneously released their grip on each other and instinctively looked toward the source of the sound. A boy was walking aggressively toward them. The boy was very tall, probably over 1.85 meters, wearing an obviously expensive designer tracksuit, limited edition sneakers, and a shiny luxury watch on his wrist. He was quite handsome, the kind of handsome that was flamboyant and aggressive, with thick, dark eyebrows and a high nose bridge. But at this moment, his handsome face was filled with gloom and anger, and his eyes were like knives, fiercely slashing at Chen Hao. Although they weren't in the same class, Chen Hao and Zhang Shuiao both knew this person. Su Kaiyang. A well-known figure at Shanghai University, his family is in the real estate and finance business, and his father is the richest man in Shanghai, a typical top-tier rich second generation. He always drove different luxury cars to school, and he changed girlfriends faster than he changed clothes. He was the object of many girls' affections at school. Su Kaiyang's biggest obsession is Zhang Shuiao. He had been openly and relentlessly pursuing Zhang Shuiao since their freshman year of college, sending her flowers, luxury goods, and booking out entire restaurants for meals. He used every romantic or rather, extravagant method imaginable. However, Zhang Shuiao remained indifferent to him, clearly rejecting him many times and refusing all the gifts he gave her. But Su Kaiyang refused to believe it, or rather, his strong possessiveness made him unwilling to give up. He continued to pester Zhang Shuiao, believing that one day he would be able to win over this icy beauty. He had just driven to the school gate and was about to find a conspicuous spot to park when he caught a glimpse of the figure he had longed for and cherished. He had actually rushed into the arms of a poor boy dressed in shabby clothes and pulling a tattered suitcase. They were hugging each other so tightly. At that moment, Su Kaiyang felt a surge of heat rush to his head, and he was so angry he felt like his lungs were about to explode. He's been chasing her for so long, and he hasn't even touched Zhang Xueyao's hand. What makes this country bumpkin who just appeared out of nowhere stand up to him? He abruptly pushed open the car door and got out, rushing over in a few steps, pointing his finger at Chen Hao's nose, his tone full of contempt and anger. "Chen Hao, I told you to let her go, are you deaf? What kind of thing are you to even touch Xueyao?" He looked Chen Hao up and down, his faded t-shirt, old jeans, and his old-fashioned suitcase all adding to his disdain. He simply couldn't understand how Zhang Xueyao could get involved with such a country bumpkin. Is this what she likes? This is simply the greatest insult to Su Kaiyang. Su Kaiyang stared intently at Chen Hao, his eyes so fierce it seemed he wanted to devour him alive, his chest heaving violently with rage. He's been pursuing Zhang Xueyao for so long and hasn't even gotten a kind word from her. What makes this poor guy think he can get her hug? The envy and jealousy in his heart burned wildly like weeds. Chapter 3: The Temptation of Over 3 Million. Su Kaiyang's commanding rebuke was like a stone thrown into water, shattering the brief moment of warmth. Zhang Xueyao's brows immediately furrowed, and her face revealed an undisguised expression of disgust. Instead of letting go of Chen Hao, she tightened her grip on his arm even more tightly and affectionately, shifting her entire weight onto him. Her soft, elastic breasts inevitably pressed tightly against Chen Hao's arm. Even through the thin summer clothes, the sensation was exceptionally clear. Chen Hao's body stiffened instantly, feeling a tingling sensation on half of his body, and his heart began to race uncontrollably again. "Chen Hao, ignore him, let's go." Zhang Xueya turned her head to the side, her voice not loud but clear enough, her tone carrying impatience with Su Kaiyang and reassurance for Chen Hao. She pulled Chen Hao, who was still somewhat dazed, and tried to walk around Su Kaiyang, who was blocking their way, into the school. Su Kaiyang watched as Zhang Xueya not only ignored his words but also linked arms with the poor boy in an even more intimate manner, even pressing her private parts against him. This was like pouring a bucket of oil on his burning jealousy. He had been pursuing Zhang Xueyao for so long, but he hadn't even touched the hem of her clothes. Now, watching her being so affectionate and proactive with another man, he was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged and his teeth were grinding together. "Stop!" Su Kaiyang suddenly took a few steps forward and once again rudely blocked the two of them, cutting off their path. His chest heaved violently, and his eyes were frighteningly gloomy. He glared at Chen Hao with a look that seemed to want to tear him to pieces. Then, he suddenly sneered, revealing a superior, arrogant attitude that suggested he was just throwing money around. He reached into his designer wallet, pulled out a gold bank card, and without even looking at it, tossed it onto the ground in front of Chen Hao with a thud, as if throwing away trash. The bank card fell onto the cement floor with a crisp sound. Su Kaiyang raised his chin and said to Chen Hao in a condescending tone, "Chen Hao, looking at your shabby appearance, you've probably never seen so much money in your life, have you? There's over 3 million in this card." He paused deliberately, observing Chen Hao's reaction. Seeing that Chen Hao was just looking at the card on the ground without saying a word, his smugness deepened. He thought that this poor kid must be stunned by the number. "Listen," Su Kaiyang continued in that condescending tone. "As long as you break up with Xueyao right now and promise never to bother her again, this card and the password are all yours. 3 million is enough for you to live a carefree and happy life in your small town." After he finished speaking, he confidently crossed his arms, waiting for Chen Hao to gratefully pick up the card and then slink away. He firmly believed that for a kid from such a poor, remote area, 3 million was an astronomical figure that was absolutely irresistible, enough to make him give up any so-called feelings. Upon hearing this, Zhang Xueyao's heart leaped into her throat. She unconsciously tightened her grip on Chen Hao's arm, her nails even digging slightly into his skin. She suddenly raised her head, nervously looking at Chen Hao's profile, her heart filled with unprecedented unease and fear. She knew that Chen Hao came from a poor family and lived a very frugal life, relying on himself for tuition and living expenses. More than 3 million. This is truly a huge sum of money that could change the fate of him and his family. Can he resist such temptation? Would he abandon her and their child for money? This thought made her feel as if an invisible hand was gripping her heart tightly, making it almost impossible for her to breathe. She was afraid to see even the slightest wavering on Chen Hao's face. More and more classmates gathered around to watch the spectacle, whispering and pointing amongst themselves. Upon hearing that Su Kaiyang had offered a staggering 3 million yuan to get the poor boy to leave Zhang Shuiao, everyone held their breath, their eyes fixed on Chen Hao, waiting to see his choice. Under everyone's gaze, Chen Hao's eyes shifted from Su Kaiyang's smug face to the gold bank card at his feet. He remained silent for a few seconds, and then, under Zhang Shuiao's suddenly desperate gaze, under Su Kaiyang's increasingly smug smile, and under the disdainful or curious gazes of the surrounding crowd, he slowly bent over. He reached out and picked up the cold bank card that represented more than 3 million yuan. Ha ha ha! Su Kaiyang immediately burst into arrogant laughter. He turned to Zhang Shuiao, whose face had instantly turned pale, and said loudly in a mocking tone, "See, I wasn't wrong. Shuiao. You see this, right? This is the person you chose. A piece of trash who wouldn't hesitate to sell you out for money. This greedy pauper doesn't deserve you at all. All he cares about is money." Looking at the card in Chen Hao's hand, Zhang Shuiao felt all the strength drain from her body. The hand that was holding Chen Hao's arm loosened weakly, little by little, until it finally fell completely down. My heart felt like it had fallen into an ice cellar, both cold and aching. Her eyes instantly reddened, and tears welled up in them. Could it be that she really misjudged him? In his heart, are she and the child not even worth more than 3 million? A buzz of discussion arose around them, filled with disdain for Chen Hao. TSK, he really is a money grubber. Over 3 million. I'd be tempted too. The school beauty is blind to have fallen for such a scumbag. He'd even throw away his girlfriend for money. What a scoundrel. Zhang Shuiao, wake up. This kind of man isn't worth it. All sorts of harsh words pierced Zhang Shuiao's ears like needles, making her feel extremely embarrassed and heartbroken. However, just when Su Kaiyang was laughing the loudest, Zhang Shuiao was in the most despair, and the onlookers were discussing the most intensely. Chen Hao did something that left everyone speechless. He gripped both ends of the bank card, expressionless, and suddenly tightened his grip. Snap! A crisp snapping sound rang out, and the gold bank card was actually broken in two by him. The laughter stopped abruptly. The mocking voices vanished instantly. Everyone stared at Chen Hao with wide eyes, as if they were ducks with their necks being choked. Chen Hao didn't even glance at the card that had been split in two. He casually tossed it at the dumbfounded Su Kaiyang as if it were trash. Two pieces of plastic fluttered lightly onto Su Kaiyang's expensive sportswear before falling to the ground. Chen Hao raised his eyes, his gaze calm yet carrying an undeniable firmness, and looked at Su Kaiyang, whose face had instantly turned ashen. He spoke clearly, word by word. Keep your stinking money for your own coffin. I don't care. After saying that, he stopped looking at Su Kaiyang's colorful expression and turned to look at Zhang Shuiao, who was also stunned and had tears still clinging to her eyelashes. His eyes softened instantly, and his voice slowed as he gently said to her, "Let's go." At this moment, Chen Hao was exceptionally clear-headed and resolute. Putting aside the seemingly powerful 10,000-fold return system in his mind, even without this system, Chen Hao would never sell his conscience and feelings for money. Zhang Shuiao, a young girl, took the initiative to come to him under such great pressure and told him that she was pregnant with his child. This affection is priceless. How could he possibly abandon her and their child for 3 million? Absolutely impossible. Zhang Shuiao was completely stunned. She stared blankly at the bank card that had been broken in half and thrown back, then looked up at Chen Hao's gentle yet firm gaze. Her mind was a little slow to process what was happening. But then, a huge, indescribable ecstasy instantly overwhelmed all her despair and sorrow like a tsunami. He didn't. He was not tempted by money. He chose her. Between 3 million and her, he chose her without hesitation. Overwhelming joy overwhelmed reason, and tears welled up in my eyes again, but this time, they were tears of joy. A smile brighter than the sun shone on her face. She nodded vigorously, her voice trembling with tears yet brimming with happiness, yes. She immediately reached out again and clung to Chen Hao's arm more tightly and dependently, almost hanging on him, as if announcing her choice to the whole world. The two ignored Su Kaiyang, who stood frozen in place with his face turning from pale to black, and paid no attention to the astonished classmates around them. They walked side by side into the depths of the campus. The surroundings were deathly silent. Everyone was stunned by this sudden reversal, their mouths agape, unable to close them for a long time. They never expected that this ordinary-looking boy from a poor family would have such courage to refuse such a huge temptation of 3 million so decisively, and even break his card. Just to be with the school beauty? This script is wrong. Shouldn't it be a story of a poor boy who gets greedy for money, takes the money and runs away, leaving the school beauty heartbroken, and the rich second generation taking the opportunity to comfort her? As Chen Hao and Zhang Xueya walked away arm in arm, the crowd fell into a long silence and shock. Chapter 4: The Envy of Three Rich Second Generation Roommates. Su Kaiyong's smug smile froze instantly, as if someone had pressed the pause button. He watched helplessly as Chen Hao decisively snapped the gold bank card that represented his wealth and confidence in two, then casually tossed it back at him, where it finally fell to the ground. That crisp crack sound wasn't just about breaking the bank card, it was more like an invisible slap across the proud face of young Master Su. He was completely stunned, his mind went blank, and he couldn't understand what was happening in front of him. More than 3 million. That's a real sum of over 3 million. For a poor country boy, shouldn't this be a number that would make him kneel down and lick his own shoes? How could he possibly refuse? How could he dare refuse? After the immense shock came a volcanic eruption of shame, indignation, and rage. Especially when he saw Zhang Xueyo, after a brief moment of shock and worry, display a kind of heartfelt joy and happiness that he had never seen before, and then cling to Chen Hao's arm even more intimately, almost pressing her whole body against him. The jealousy that was about to burn him to ashes completely overwhelmed his reason. He felt as if the gazes of all the classmates watching him were like needles pricking him, filled with silent mockery. Su Kaiyong, the son of Shanghai's richest man, actually failed to bribe a poor country bumpkin. This is an utter disgrace. Chen Hao. Su Kaiyong roared angrily at the two figures walking arm in arm into the depths of the campus, his voice distorted with extreme rage. You just wait. You'll regret this. I'll make you regret your choice today. His threats, filled with hostility, echoed at the school gate. However, Chen Hao didn't even pause for a moment. He just turned his head slightly and glanced at him coldly out of the corner of his eye. There was no fear in his eyes, only a calm indifference. He then withdrew his gaze, lowered his head slightly, and said something to Zhang Xueyo, who was standing right next to him. Zhang Xueyo looked up at him and smiled sweetly. The two continued to walk forward at a leisurely pace, completely ignoring Su Kaiyong and his impotent and furious threat. This dismissive attitude made Su Kaiyong feel more frustrated and furious than any rebuttal. He clenched his fists so tightly that his nails almost dug into his palms, his face was ashen, and his chest heaved violently, like a trapped beast that had been thoroughly enraged but had nowhere to vent its anger. Walking along the tree-lined path leading to the dormitory area, away from the chaotic gazes and Su Kaiyong's roars behind me, the surroundings became much quieter. Zhang Xueyo still clung tightly to Chen Hao's arm, as if he would run away if she let go. She quietly raised her head, looked at Chen Hao's sharply defined profile, and whispered with lingering fear. Just now. I was so scared. I was so afraid of you, so afraid you took that card. Even now, when she thinks about it, her heart still races. She never wanted to experience that moment of despair and heartbreak again. Chen Hao felt her grip on his arm tighten, and he knew she was genuinely frightened. He turned to her, gave her a gentle smile, and asked in a slightly teasing tone. What? You have so little faith in me? Do you think I, Chen Hao, am the kind of person who's only interested in money? No. It's not that I lack confidence in you. Zhang Xueya quickly shook her head, explaining anxiously, her face slightly flushed. I lack confidence in myself. That's over 3 million. I'm afraid that in your heart, I'm not as important as that much money. Her voice trailed off, carrying a barely perceptible hint of grievance and unease. Even though she came from a wealthy family and had never lacked money growing up, she still couldn't help but feel afraid and doubtful when faced with such a blatant test of money in that situation. Seeing her so cautious, Chen Hao's heart softened. He stopped, looked intently into Zhang Xueyao's eyes, and said firmly. Xueyao, listen carefully. In my eyes, you and the child are priceless. Let alone 3 million, even 30 million or 300 million wouldn't compare. Stop overthinking things, okay? His gaze was honest and direct, devoid of any flowery words, yet more powerful than any promise. Zhang Xueyo stared at him blankly, looking at her own reflection in his clear eyes. A huge warm current instantly surged through her body, dispelling all her unease and gloom. She nodded vigorously, a bright smile returning to her face, like a blooming flower. Okay. I understand. The two continued walking and soon arrived at the entrance of the girls' dormitory area. Many girls came and went, and many recognized Zhang Xueyo and saw her intimately linked arm with Chen Hao, casting curious and surprised glances at them. I have arrived. Zhang Xueyo stopped at the entrance of the dormitory building, let go of Chen Hao's hand, but her eyes were full of reluctance. Okay, go upstairs and get some rest. Chen Hao nodded. Zhang Shuiao hummed in agreement, but remained standing still. She looked up at Chen Hao, her eyes glazed over, and whispered, then. I'll go up? Good. She then slowly turned around and walked back into the dormitory building, glancing back every step of the way. After taking a few steps, she turned back to look at Chen Hao. Seeing that he was still standing there watching her, she gave him a sweet smile and waved. She took a few more steps, then turned back, and so on, lingering for quite a while before her figure finally disappeared at the entrance of the dormitory building. Chen Hao stood there, watching her go inside until she was out of sight, before letting out a soft sigh of relief. Too many things happened today, and they all happened so suddenly. He needs some time to process them. He shook his head, dragged his suitcase, and turned to walk towards the boys' dormitory area. Chen Hao's dormitory is on the 5th floor of the boys' dormitory building. It's a 4-person room. He took out his key and opened the door. The dormitory was empty, but there were things on the other 3 beds and desks. Obviously, his 3 roommates had already arrived at school and probably went out to play together. The dormitory is nice, with bunk beds and desks underneath. Chen Hao found his place and began to quietly pack the luggage he had brought from home. He folded a few faded old clothes and put them in the closet. He also took out the dried sweet potatoes and roasted peanuts that his mother had insisted on giving him, intending to share them with his roommates when they returned. Just as he was about to finish packing, he heard a familiar sound of laughter and playful banter coming from the hallway outside, along with the thumping of a basketball on the floor. Soon, the dormitory door was pushed open with a bang, and 3 boys of different heights, wearing sports vests, covered in sweat, filed in. It was his 3 roommates Dong Letian, Bai Yu, and Fan Xing. Dong Letian was still holding a dirty basketball in his hands. As soon as the 3 entered the room, their eyes lit up when they saw Chen Hao packing his things. The fatigue and sweat on their faces were replaced by an expression of extreme excitement and gossip. Howsy? You're back. Dong Letian, the tallest and strongest among them, tossed the basketball into the corner and was the first to rush over, slapping Chen Hao on the shoulder with such force that Chen Hao winced. Immediately afterwards, Bai Yu, who wore black-rimmed glasses and looked rather refined, and Fan Xing, who had short hair and a clever look on his face, also surrounded him. The 3 of them blocked Chen Hao between his desk and chair, and their 6 eyes scanned his face like searchlights. Howsy? Hurry up! Confess! Dong Letian shouted the loudest, speaking impatiently with barely suppressed excitement on his face. We just heard from the basketball court that something big happened at the school gate. School beauty Zhang Shuiao, did she confess to you? And hugged you? Is it true? Tell me. Bai Yu pushed up his glasses, and although he didn't say anything, his eyes were full of curiosity and a desire to verify. Fan Xing grinned mischievously and nudged Chen Hao in the lower back with his elbow. Well done, Howsy. You're usually so quiet, I didn't expect you to be so quick. He actually won over the most beautiful girl in our Shanghai University? And she even made the first move? That's incredibly impressive. It turns out they had just gone to play basketball and overheard other students discussing the shocking news that happened at the school gate. They said that Su Kaiyang, a rich second generation, confronted a strange boy over the school beauty Zhang Shuiao, and then Zhang Shuiao actually hugged the boy and they walked away together intimately. After carefully inquiring about the boy's appearance, they found it increasingly resembled their roommate Chen Hao. They lost all interest in playing basketball and rushed back to verify. Seeing his 3 roommates' burning passion for gossip, Chen Hao touched his nose a little embarrassedly, but still nodded and admitted. Yes, it's true. Although they were somewhat prepared, the 3 of them still erupted in chaos upon hearing Chen Hao's admission. Holy crap! Holy crap! It really is! Dong Letian jumped up and down excitedly, even more excited than if he had won the lottery. He grabbed Chen Hao's neck and hugged him tightly. Howsy? You're amazing! You really made our 510 dorm proud. That's Zhang Shuiao, the dream girl of so many people. And you managed to snag her so quietly. Tell me quickly, what exactly happened? When did you 2 get together? You kept it a secret for a while. Bai Yu couldn't help but laugh and shake his head, exclaiming, amazing, Chen Hao, I really didn't expect that. Zhang Shuiao usually keeps her distance from everyone, but she's actually being nice to you. Looks like Howsy, you're such a charmer. Fan Xing exaggeratedly pounded his chest and stamped his feet, crying out, heavens above! Earth below! Is there no justice left in this world? Howzy, you're amazing. Not only are you a top student, but even your girlfriends are top tier. Are you trying to kill us all? I'm so envious. So jealous. So resentful. Although he said he was envious and jealous, his face was full of smiles of happiness for his brother. The three of them surrounded Chen Hao, chattering and teasing him, filling the dormitory with a joyful atmosphere. They were genuinely happy for Chen Hao. Although all three of them came from well-off families and were considered second-generation rich kids, while Chen Hao came from a rural area and was much less well-off, they never looked down on Chen Hao because of this during the 2 years they lived together. On the contrary, they admired him for earning scholarships through his own efforts and for consistently outperforming them academically. When they go out to eat or have fun, she always takes Chen Hao along and often insists on paying the bill, taking good care of him. Hearing that his brother had quietly won over the school beauty, he felt a genuine sense of pride and excitement. Chapter 5: Finding a Way to Make Quick Money. Dong Letian, Baiyu, and Fan Xing excitedly surrounded Chen Hao, chattering away about Zhang Shuiao for a long time before finally calming down a bit. Dong Letian seemed to suddenly remember something, slapped his thigh, and asked in a loud voice. By the way, howzy? We also heard that Su Kaiyang, that bastard, really tried to bribe you to leave Zhang Xiaohua? Baiyu and Fan Xing immediately stopped smiling and looked at Chen Hao with concern. Chen Hao nodded and said calmly, yes, he took a bank card and said there were more than 3 million in it, and told me to take the money and leave. Holy crap! Over 3 million. This bastard really knows how to spend money. Dong Letian cursed as soon as he heard that. That bastard thinks he can solve everything just because his family has some money, huh? What a piece of trash. Baiyu pushed up his glasses, his face also showing disdain. Su Kaiyang has always been like this. All he does to woo girls is throw money at them, thinking everyone and everything can be put in a price tag. His thinking is incredibly shallow. Fan Xing also spat, Pa. Just because you have a little money doesn't mean you're so great. It's infuriating. Howzy, what did you say to him back then? We only heard that you broke his card, but what exactly happened? Tell us. Looking at his three indignant roommates, Chen Hao felt a warmth in his heart, and briefly explained what had happened. He threw the card in front of me, said to tell me the password, and told me to leave Zhang Shuiao. Then I picked up the card, broke it, and threw it back to him, telling him to keep the money to buy his own coffin. Well done. Beautifully done. Dong Letian excitedly slapped Chen Hao on the back again, the force so strong that Chen Hao staggered forward. Howzy, we brothers were right about you. You're tough. You're a real man. Over 3 million. You just gave it up like that. For your unwavering resolve, I, Dong Letian, admire you. Baiyu smiled and gave Chen Hao a thumbs up. Indeed, Chen Hao, you did the right thing. Feelings cannot be measured by money. What you're doing is making him feel worse than if you beat him up. Fan Xing even bowed exaggeratedly, Brother Hao. From today onwards, you are my idol. Faced with $3 million and the school beauty, you chose love without even blinking. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Chen Hao was a little embarrassed by the praise from his three brothers. He smiled and said nothing. However, after the initial excitement, Baiyu was the first to calm down. A hint of worry appeared on his face, and his tone became more serious. However, Chen Hao, there's something I need to remind you of. Su Kaiyang is notorious for being petty and vindictive. By breaking his card in public this time, you've essentially humiliated him. He must feel incredibly ashamed. Knowing his personality, he definitely won't let this go. You need to be more careful at school from now on, and watch out for him trying to trip you up behind your back. Dong Letian also stopped smiling and nodded in agreement. Xiaobai is right. Su Kaiyang is a rich and powerful man, and he's always surrounded by a bunch of sycophantic lackeys. He might not dare to do anything openly, but he's absolutely capable of doing something sneaky and annoying behind the scenes. Howzy, try not to go to secluded places alone lately. If anything happens, call the three of us brothers. Fan Xing patted his chest and said, That's right. We in dormitory 510 are of one mind. If Su Kaiyang dares to lay a finger on you, the three of us will be the first to object. Feeling the genuine concern from his roommates, Chen Hao felt a warmth in his heart. He nodded earnestly, Thank you, brothers. I'll be careful. At this time, the sky outside the window gradually darkened, and it was time for dinner. Dong Letian rubbed his rumbling stomach and waved his hand. Let's go. Let's go eat. To celebrate Haozi successfully finding a girlfriend, and with a top campus beauty like Zhang Shuiyao no less, we have to go out to eat tonight, it's on me. Bai Yu and Fan Xing immediately raised their hands in agreement. Agree. We have to treat Latte to a good meal. Chen Hao quickly waved his hand. No need, I'll just eat something in the cafeteria, don't spend money. That won't do. Dong Letian grabbed Chen Hao's shoulder without saying a word and dragged him out of the dormitory. Such a joyous occasion, wouldn't it be a shame not to go out and have a nice meal? School starts tomorrow, today's the perfect time to relax. Come on, let's go, stop dawdling. Bai Yu and Fan Xing were also laughing and shoving each other from behind. Yeah, Haozi, don't spoil the fun. Why are you being so polite with us? Unable to resist his three enthusiastic roommates, Chen Hao reluctantly let them pull him out of the dormitory and head out of the school. The four of them went to a nicely decorated mid-range restaurant near the school. Dong Letian was clearly a regular here. He knew exactly where to go, so he asked for a small private room, then picked up the menu and ordered a whole bunch of hearty dishes without any hesitation, such as boiled fish, braised pork, and braised prawns. He added at the end, let's start with a case of ice-cold beer. Soon, the dishes were served one after another, filling the entire table. Dong Letian placed a bottle of beer in front of each person, deftly pried open the bottle cap with chopsticks, and foam instantly gushed out. He was the first to raise his bottle, and said with great pride, "Come on, guys. Let's have a toast to celebrate the pride of our 510 dorm. Comrade Chen Hao has successfully won the heart of the most beautiful girl at our Shanghai University. Wishing him and Zhang Shuiyao a long and happy marriage and many children. Cheers! Cheers!" Bai Yu and Fan Xing also raised their bottles with laughter. Chen Hao's face flushed slightly after Dong Lishan's words, "May you have a son soon." The three of them probably didn't know that Zhang Shuiyao was pregnant with his child. He raised his bottle and clinked it against theirs. "Thanks, brothers. Haozi, that's great. I'll finish mine, you can drink as you like." Dong Letian said, tilting his head back and gulping down more than half a bottle of beer. Bai Yu and Fan Xing also took a big gulp. Chen Hao's alcohol tolerance was average, and he was preoccupied with other things, so he only took a small, symbolic sip. Dong Letian didn't force him, put down the wine bottle, and started arranging for the food to be served. "Eat up. Don't be shy. Haozi, try this fish, their boiled fish is absolutely amazing." The atmosphere at the dinner was very lively. Dong Letian, Bai Yu, and Fan Xing took turns toasting Chen Hao, offering various blessings and teasing remarks. Chen Hao returned the toasts one by one, but each time he only drank a little bit. He looked at his noisy, genuinely happy brothers and felt a deep sense of gratitude. He knew that his three well-off roommates genuinely treated him like a brother and had never looked down on him because of his background. The meal lasted almost 2 hours, mainly consisting of Dong Letian and his two companions drinking and making a ruckus, while Chen Hao spent most of the time listening and eating. When it came time to pay the bill, Dong Letian insisted on paying, and Chen Hao wanted to split the bill, but Dong Letian glared at him and refused. "I said I'd treat, so I'll treat. If you try to take it from me again, I'll get really angry." The four of them, having eaten and drunk their fill, walked arm in arm toward the school. Dong Letian, Bai Yu, and Fan Xing were all a little tipsy, their faces were flushed, they were swaying slightly as they walked, and they were humming off-key songs. Because he hadn't drunk much, Chen Hao was still quite clear-headed, and as he walked, he had to keep an eye out for any guy who might fall into the roadside ditch. The evening breeze felt cool on my face. Looking at his boisterous brothers around him, Chen Hao's smile gradually faded, and he began to plan for the future. So much happened today. Zhang Shuiyao's confession, the news of her pregnancy, Su Kaiyong's humiliation and threats, and that mysterious 10,000-fold return system, all of this forced him to grow up as quickly as possible. Especially when I think of Zhang Shuiyao and the child in her belly. Zhang Shuiyao is the daughter of the second richest man in Shanghai. She has lived a life of luxury since childhood, so her spending level must be very high. How can he let someone else raise his children, Chen Hao's children? He must take on this responsibility. He's still a student, so there aren't many ways for him to make money. It's nothing more than tutoring or doing odd jobs. But those jobs are not only hard work, but also pay very little. That income is far from enough to provide a good life for Zhang Shuiyao and her child. He needs money, and he needs to make a lot of money quickly. But how can I make big money quickly? Chen Hao frowned, deep in thought. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. System. By the way, doesn't he have a system? That system that returns 10,000 times the amount. Its main function is to accumulate experience in a certain skill through learning or practice, and the system will give back 110,000 times the experience. If we can make good use of this system. An idea gradually became clear in his mind: stock trading. He can quickly learn and master stock trading knowledge and skills through the system. Then, with a learning speed and experience far exceeding that of ordinary people, they can make money in the stock market. Although the stock market is risky, it is also recognized as one of the places where wealth can be created quickly. Yes. That's what we'll do. Chen Hao's eyes lit up, and he had a clear goal in mind. He decided that once he got back, he would immediately start studying stocks and use the system's 10,000x return function to master stock trading skills as quickly as possible and earn the first pot of gold for himself, Zhang Shuiao, and their child. Chapter 6, 151x Critical Hit Return, Master Level Stock Trading Skills. The streetlights were already on, their dim yellow light outlining four young figures. They had just come from a restaurant outside the school, and there seemed to be a lingering smell of food and drinks in the air. Hey guys, slow down. Why is the curb moving? Dong Letian had half his body pressed against Fan Xing, muttering to himself, his steps feeling like he was walking on cotton. Fan Xing himself was swaying violently, and he still had to try his best to support Dong Letian, saying with a mix of amusement and exasperation, "Old Dong, don't slide down. Bai Yu, give me a hand." Bai Yu's face turned red. He adjusted his glasses and tried to grab Dong Lixian's other arm, but the three of them almost tripped and fell flat on their faces. After a flurry of activity, they finally regained their footing, looked at each other's disheveled appearance, and chuckled to themselves. Chen Hao followed beside them, looking at the trio staggering about, and couldn't help but laugh. He was carrying several bottles of mineral water for his roommates, and despite not having drunk a drop of alcohol, he appeared remarkably sober in the drunken group. "Hey Haozi," Dong Letian finally managed to stand up, slurring his words, and patted Chen Hao on the shoulder. "Are you really not coming back to our dorm room for a chat?" Chen Hao handed them the water and smiled. "You guys are in such a state, you'll probably fall asleep the moment your heads hit the pillow when you get back, let alone have a late-night chat. I'm going to the library to read for a while. I'll be bored when I get back anyway." TSK. Bai Yu took the water, unscrewed the cap, took a sip, pointed at Chen Hao, and said to the other two, "Look at this. This is what you call the self-discipline of a top student. School hasn't even started yet, and they're already working this hard. Give us average students a break." Fan Xing joined in the fun, putting his arm around Chen Hao's neck. "That's right, Haozi, relax a bit, it's not too late to read tomorrow." Chen Hao was swayed by their movements, and he knew that his roommates meant well, but he had his own plans. He now has a girlfriend and an unborn child, and he needs to shoulder the responsibilities of a man. He couldn't say these words directly, so he just smiled and pulled away from Fan Xing's arm. All right, you guys go back now. Be careful on the road, don't fall into the ditch. I think I'll be back in a bit." Seeing his resolute attitude and knowing his stubborn nature once he made up his mind, nothing could sway him, and also because they were all genuinely confused, the three of them stopped trying to persuade him. Dong Letian waved his hand, adopting an "I grant your permission" stance. All right. My dear minister, your hard work pleases me greatly. Return to the palace soon. Get lost. Chen Hao said with a smile, giving him a gentle push. Then the three of us will head out first. Haozi, take care of yourself, Fan Xing said unsteadily. Okay, let's go. Chen Hao nodded. Watching his three roommates support each other, stumbling and trudging towards the dormitory building, with intermittent humming and laughter echoing along the way, Chen Hao felt a warmth in his heart. Then he turned around and walked quickly toward the library. The library at Shanghai University is very large, and even at night, it is still brightly lit, with many students engrossed in their studies. Chen Hao was a regular here. In the past, when he came, he would usually go straight to the computer science bookshelf, since that was his major and he needed to get scholarships with excellent grades to support his studies. But today, his goal is clear. He walked through the familiar computer area and went straight to the bookshelf for economics and finance. My gaze swept across the bookshelf and finally settled on several thick books with titles such as Introduction to Stocks and Practical Application, Core Techniques of Candlestick Charts, and The Way of Value Investing. He took out the books, held them in his arms, and then found the quietest corner in the reading area to sit down. There was hardly anyone around, only the faint humming of the overhead light tubes. Taking a deep breath, Chen Hao opened the most basic book, Introduction to Stocks and Practical Application. The pages are a bit old, but very clean. He composed himself and began to read attentively. Just as his gaze was focused on the first paragraph about basic stock concepts, a crystal-clear electronic notification sounded in his mind without warning. Ding! Detected that the host has actively learned about stock trading. Congratulations! You have successfully activated and acquired the stock trading skill. Current level, beginner 0-100. It's here! Chen Hao felt a surge of secret joy, and his heart involuntarily skipped a few beats. This system is really real. And he was so quick to learn that he acquired the corresponding skill as soon as he started reading the book. This gave him more confidence in his plan to make money quickly using the system. He suppressed his excitement and continued reading. However, he soon discovered something even more surprising. His reading speed and comprehension seemed to have become stronger than ever before. He could read almost 10 lines of text at a glance. And it's not just about being able to read quickly, it also includes understanding the definitions of stocks, trading rules, market terminology, fundamental analysis, technical analysis, and so on. These concepts, which might be obscure and difficult for beginners, became exceptionally clear and simple in his eyes at this moment, as if he had an innate affinity and comprehension for these things. Once you've read it once, you'll understand it immediately, and it will be deeply imprinted in your mind, impossible to forget. Is this also an effect of the system? Chen Hao was both surprised and delighted. He speculated that this was likely because the activation of his stock trading skills had consequently improved his efficiency and comprehension in learning related fields. This discovery greatly encouraged him, and he read even faster. He turned the pages one by one, his eyes focused, his brain like a highly efficient sponge, frantically absorbing the knowledge in the book. He read the thick book Introduction to Stocks and Practical Application in less than half an hour and completely understood it. The moment he closed the last page of the book, the familiar notification sound rang out again precisely on time. Ding! Detected that the host has fully read and understood Introduction to Stocks and Practical Application. Congratulations! You have accumulated 183 stock trading experience points. Ding! Triggered a 10,000x return effect. You have received a 151x experience bonus. Refund calculation, 183 points 151 is equal to 27,633 experience points. Congratulations! Your stock trading skill experience points are full, and your level has increased. Current stock trading skill level, Master 26333100000. A series of prompts echoed in Chen Hao's mind like the most beautiful music. He was completely stunned, still holding the book he had just closed, his eyes wide open, his heart filled with turmoil. Ecstasy. An indescribable ecstasy overwhelmed him instantly. One copy. I only read one introductory book. He actually jumped directly from beginner to master? Although he had guessed that the system would be powerful, this effect was just too incredible. This is no longer just a simple learning acceleration, it's like taking a rocket. The skill level classifications were clearly imprinted in his mind: beginner, proficient, expert, master, grandmaster, epic, legendary, mythical, and eternal. Master level stock trading skills. This is a level that an ordinary person might need to spend more than 10 or even decades struggling in the stock market and experiencing countless profits and losses to reach. This means that he has surpassed at least 90% of investors in the market and has become a true stock trading master. Whether it's technical analysis, fundamental analysis, money management, or risk control, he possesses extremely profound theoretical and practical skills experience imparted by the system. Chen Hao pinched his thigh hard, and the sharp pain told him that this was not a dream. He suppressed the cheers that were about to burst from his throat and tried to make his expression look calm, but his slightly trembling hands betrayed his inner excitement. Master level. That's not enough. He remembered the system notification that the next level was Grandmaster, which required 100,000 experience points. He is still short more than 70,000. Moreover, being merely a master might allow him to make money, but to quickly make big money and cope with various future possibilities, he needs much stronger abilities. He wants to become stronger. Without the slightest hesitation, Chen Hao immediately put aside the book he had just finished reading, Introduction to Stocks and Practical Application, and picked up the thicker book, Core Techniques of Candlestick Charts. He took a deep breath and immersed himself once again in the ocean of knowledge. With his master-level stock trading skills as a foundation, he felt much more relaxed and at ease when reading more in-depth technical analysis books. The book contains complex candlestick patterns, chart theories, volume-price relationships, and the application of various technical indicators. In his eyes, they were no longer difficult symbols, but vivid market language. He could even draw inferences from them and associate them with more practical scenarios and variations. His gaze became even more focused, and he turned the pages even faster than before. He wants to take his stock trading skills to a whole new level tonight, right here in this library. Chapter 7: The School Beauty's First Kiss. Suppressing his excitement at reaching the master level, Chen Hao immediately opened the thicker and more professional book, Core Techniques of Candlestick Charts, without any hesitation. With his master-level foundation, his reading and comprehension of the book not only did not slow down, but actually became faster. The book covers profound candlestick patterns, complex volume-price relationships, in-depth applications of various technical indicators, and divergence analysis. This knowledge, which would take an ordinary investor months to study, came to him as naturally as breathing. He could even clearly feel that an invisible financial market model was being built in his mind. Every piece of knowledge from the book could immediately create ripples and generate countless market possibilities and coping strategies. His gaze was terrifyingly focused, his fingers turning the pages of the book were steady and swift, and he was completely immersed in this wonderful state of efficiently absorbing knowledge. In less than 20 minutes, he had completely digested and absorbed the thicker and more in-depth book, Core Techniques of Candlestick Charts. As he gently closed the last page of the book, the familiar, heavenly system notification sound rang out again precisely on time. Ding! Detected that the host has fully read and understood Core Techniques of Candlestick Charts. Congratulations! You have accumulated 216 stock trading experience points. Ding! Triggered a 10,000x return effect. You have received an 896x experience bonus. Refund calculation: 216 points 896 is equal to 193,536 experience points. Congratulations! Your stock trading skill experience points are full, and your level has increased. Current stock trading skill level: Master 11986910000000. Hiss. Chen Hao couldn't help but gasp, his heart pounding, his blood seemingly boiling at that moment. 896x critical hit. Nearly 200,000 experience points. He skipped the huge experience gap directly from the master level and stepped into the Grandmaster Hall. Grandmaster level. This is a rare phenomenon in the global financial market, a level that countless investors can never reach in their entire lives. Every person who reaches this level is a legendary figure with extraordinary insight into the market and almost intuitive, accurate judgment. They are top-tier individuals who can rival or even surpass those world-renowned stock market gurus. He felt as if his brain had undergone a complete baptism and sublimation. All the knowledge, skills, rules, and even that mysterious market sense about the stock market were deeply imprinted on his soul, as if they were innate instincts. He is now absolutely confident that, given a certain amount of startup capital and a computer with internet access, he can, like a top predator, accurately seize every opportunity in the turbulent stock market and calmly acquire astonishing wealth. That's enough. This level is more than enough. Chen Hao let out a long sigh of relief, his tense nerves finally relaxing, and an indescribable excitement and sense of accomplishment filled his body. He was about to get up, put the books he had finished reading back in their places, and then go back to his dormitory to plan his next practical operation. Just then, a familiar, faint fragrance wafted into his nose. He subconsciously looked up, following the scent, and saw a slender figure standing gracefully beside his table, a gentle and sweet smile on her face, and her clear and captivating eyes filled with undisguised love and longing. It was Zhang Xueyao. She seemed to have just come from outside, still carrying the slight chill of the night. She quietly sat down in the empty seat next to Chen Hao, and, afraid of disturbing others, greeted him softly in a voice only the two of them could hear. Chen Hao, you really are here. When Chen Hao saw her, his heart warmed. The excitement he had felt earlier due to the system upgrade had subsided considerably, and he responded softly, yes, you're here. Zhang Xueyao's gaze naturally fell on the several conspicuous stock trading books in front of Chen Hao. Her beautiful eyebrows furrowed slightly, a hint of confusion and curiosity on her face. She leaned closer, almost touching Chen Hao's ear, and whispered, "Why are you suddenly reading these books? I've never seen you interested in stocks before." The warm breath on her ear, carrying her unique fragrance, made Chen Hao's heart skip a beat. He looked around. Although they were in a secluded spot, the library was not a place to talk. He lowered his voice as well and said to Zhang Xueyao, "It's not convenient to talk here, let's go outside and talk." Zhang Xueyao immediately nodded obediently, "Okay." Chen Hao quickly got up, picked up the 2 books, Introduction to Stocks and Practical Application and Core Techniques of Candlestick Charts, and accurately put them back in their original positions on the economics and finance bookshelf according to their index numbers. The whole process was swift and efficient, without any unnecessary delays. After putting the books away, he and Zhang Shuya walked out of the quiet library side by side. The campus is much quieter at night than during the day. The streetlights cast a soft, dim yellow glow on the ground, and the paths leading to different dormitory areas were quiet and hazy. Not far from the library, on a quiet path with few people, Zhang Shuya naturally reached out and affectionately took Chen Hao's arm, pressing her soft, firm breasts against his arm, practically nestling against him. Feeling the warmth and amazing elasticity of his arm, Chen Hao's body stiffened slightly, but he quickly relaxed, a strange sense of satisfaction and responsibility welling up inside him. "Can you tell me now?" Zhang Shuya tilted her pretty face up, her eyes shining brightly in the dim light, filled with anticipation and a hint of barely perceptible worry. "Why did you suddenly decide to learn about stock trading? Is it because you're short of money?" "If you are short of money, I..." She didn't finish her sentence, but her meaning was clear. Chen Hao stopped and cautiously looked around. After confirming that no one else was nearby, he turned to Zhang Shuya, looking intently into her eyes. His voice was soft, but unusually firm. "It's not because we're short of money." He paused, organized his thoughts, and continued, "It's because we have a child now." Upon hearing the word child, Zhang Shuya's cheeks flushed slightly, and she unconsciously tightened her grip on his hand. Chen Hao's tone became even more solemn. "I am a man. Since I chose to be with you, and we even have a child together, I must take on the responsibility. Raising the children, and taking care of you, these are all things I should do. Therefore, I must find a way to make money, enough money to give you all a good life." After he finished speaking, a brief silence fell over the area. Zhang Shuya stared blankly at Chen Hao, at the undeniable seriousness and sense of responsibility on his face, and at her own reflection in his clear eyes. An indescribable surge of heat rushed into my nasal cavity and eye sockets, instantly blurring my vision. She had heard far too many similar stories happening on university campuses. When many girls become pregnant unexpectedly, their so-called boyfriend's first reaction is panic and shirking responsibility, followed by trying every means to coax and deceive them. They even pressured girls to abort their children, fearing it would affect their future or burden them with responsibility. She had almost never seen a man like Chen Hao, who not only did not run away at all, but also so firmly included her in their child and his future plans and took the initiative to shoulder this heavy responsibility. Moved, relieved, happy, a mix of emotions made her voice choke up. "Chen Hao," she called softly, resting her head on his shoulder, her voice so gentle it could melt water. "Thank you, really. I didn't choose the wrong person." At that moment, she felt that all her previous anxiety, grievances, and worries had vanished. She was absolutely certain that she had found a man she could entrust her life to. Chapter 8: Borrowing Money to Speculate in Stocks. Zhang Shuya leaned on Chen Hao's shoulder, feeling the firmness and responsibility in his words, her heart felt filled with sweetness. She was moved for a while before she gradually calmed down and regained her senses. She gently raised her head, still holding Chen Hao's arm, but her face showed more worry and seriousness. "Chen Hao, I know you're doing this for my and the child's good, and you want to make money as soon as possible. But the risks of stock trading are really high. My dad used to trade stocks, and I've heard him say that the stock market is unpredictable and often can't be understood just by reading a few books. It takes many years of practical experience and paying a lot of tuition fees to even begin to grasp the basics." She paused, looked into Chen Hao's eyes, and said in a consoling tone, "You've only read 2 books, and you want to make money from this. I'm worried you'll suffer losses. Or, shall we think of another way? Or, perhaps you could study for a while longer and gain more experience with a demo account?" Chen Hao could feel the genuine concern in her words, and his heart warmed. However, he has absolute confidence in the master-level stock trading skills he has just acquired. This is not as simple as reading 2 books. It is experience and intuition directly instilled by the system, comparable to the world's top stock market gurus. Unable to reveal the system's secret, he could only explain in a way that was as convincing as possible. "Shuya, I understand your concerns. However, I really benefited from reading those 2 books. I felt like I suddenly had an epiphany and gained a very thorough understanding of stocks. Don't worry, I won't act rashly. I'll test the waters with a small amount of money first, and then increase the investment once I'm confident. I am confident I can do it well." Seeing Chen Hao's resolute attitude and the unwavering certainty in his eyes, Zhang Shuya knew that further persuasion might only put pressure on him. She sighed softly and conceded, "Well, all right. Since you're so confident, I'll support you. But you must promise me you'll be very careful and not take any risks." "Okay, I promise you." Chen Hao nodded solemnly. Zhang Shuiao thought for a moment and then said, "Then, you need startup capital to start your stock trading, right? I've saved up some pocket money and New Year's money over the years, about 1,000,000 yuan. Would you like to take it and use it?" she said, reaching for her bank card in her small bag. A surge of immense emotion welled up within Chen Hao. Zhang Shuiao genuinely wanted to help him, and even offered to use all her savings without hesitation. But he almost immediately grabbed her hand, shook his head, and spoke in a gentle yet unusually firm tone. "No need, Shuiao. Keep your money for yourself. I will find a way to solve the funding problem myself." He looked at Zhang Shuiao, his eyes clear and earnest. "I said I would take responsibility and support you with my own abilities, so let us start with this first investment. If I have to rely on you even for this little bit of money, what kind of man am I?" These words, though not impassioned, carried a profound and weighty power. Looking into his determined eyes and feeling the pride and responsibility in his words, Zhang Shuiao felt the emotion she had just suppressed surge back up, stronger than ever before. He not only didn't want her money, but also wanted to rely entirely on himself to work hard and make a name for himself, just to fulfill his promise to support her and the child. She stared blankly at Chen Hao, the soft light of the street lamp casting a soft glow on his profile, outlining his resolute features. At that moment, she felt her heart was completely filled with immense happiness and a sense of security. She suddenly stopped and let go of Chen Hao's hand. Chen Hao was taken aback and stopped as well, looking at her with a puzzled expression. Zhang Shuiao quickly glanced left and right like a thief to confirm that there were indeed only the two of them on this quiet path. Then, she turned around, facing Chen Hao directly, and slightly raised her exquisite and flawless face. Her cheeks were flushed, as if painted with the most beautiful sunset, and her long eyelashes trembled gently before slowly closing. She tiptoed, raising her luscious lips, with a hint of determination and boundless shyness, gently and proactively toward Chen Hao. Seeing the incredibly alluring scene before him, and smelling the captivating fragrance emanating from her so close at hand, Chen Hao's mind went completely blank. My blood seemed to speed up instantly, and an irresistible urge surged into my heart. Almost instinctively, he lowered his head and accurately caught those two warm, moist lips, then gently kissed them. The moment their lips met, both of them trembled slightly. At first, it was just a gentle touch, tentative and awkward. But soon, a primal emotion was ignited. Without realizing it, Chen Hao reached out and embraced Zhang Shuiao's slender waist, pulling her even closer into his arms. Zhang Shuiao obediently clung to him, her hands unconsciously wrapping around his neck, responding awkwardly yet passionately. The night breeze seemed to have become ambiguous, and the surroundings were so quiet that only the sound of their increasingly rapid breathing and heartbeats could be heard. This was their first kiss, innocent and clumsy, yet filled with the purest emotions and heart-fluttering feelings. However, just as the two were immersed in this wonderful experience, a faint sound of footsteps approaching from one end of the path suddenly came. Like startled rabbits, the two suddenly separated, quickly creating some distance between them. Zhang Shuiao's face turned so red it was almost bleeding. She hurriedly lowered her head and covered her lips with the back of her hand. Chen Hao's heart was pounding and his face was burning. He forced himself to remain calm and looked in the direction from which the footsteps were coming. It was a boy I didn't recognize. He had probably just come back from studying and was humming a song. He didn't notice the young couple who had just parted ways on the roadside. Once the boy had walked away and disappeared in the direction of the dormitory building, the two of them breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. They looked at each other and saw lingering fear and a trace of passion in each other's eyes. Neither of them spoke again, and they walked towards the girls' dormitory area one after the other, keeping a half-step distance between them. A subtle awkwardness and a strong sweetness filled the air. They were both savoring the brief but profound kiss they had just shared, their hearts pounding like deer. Soon, we arrived at the girls' dormitory area. I'm going up. Zhang Shuiao stood at the entrance of the dormitory building, her voice barely audible, still not daring to look up at Chen Hao. Okay, get some rest. Chen Hao's voice was also lower than usual. Zhang Shuiao nodded, then turned around and quickly walked into the dormitory building, her figure soon disappearing into the lobby. Chen Hao stood there, watching her figure disappear, and subconsciously touched his lips, where the soft, sweet scent seemed to linger. He took a few deep breaths to calm his still somewhat agitated emotions before turning and walking towards the boys' dormitory. Back in dormitory 510, it was quiet except for Dong Lishan's deafening snoring. Bai Yu and Fan Xing had both drawn their curtains, indicating they were both fast asleep. Chen Hao quietly took his toiletries, took a quick shower in the washroom, brushed his teeth, and then climbed into his bed. Even after lying down, his mind was still replaying everything that had happened that night. The system's amazing upgrade, Zhang Xueya's gentleness and support, and that sudden, heart-pounding kiss. With these chaotic thoughts and an expectation for the future, he gradually drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Chen Hao was still the first one to wake up in the dormitory. His long-standing habit of waking up early allows him to maintain his biological clock even on holidays. He got up quietly, washed up, and tidied up his dormitory a little. After he finished his work, Dong Lishan's snoring gradually stopped, followed by the rustling sounds of him getting out of bed. Bai Yu and Fan Xing were also woken up by the noise one after another, and rubbing their sleepy eyes, they climbed out of bed. "Good morning, Haozi. What time is it? I'm so sleepy." The three greeted each other in a daze and took turns going to the washroom to wash up. After they were all ready, the four of them went out together to the school cafeteria for breakfast. The cafeteria was bustling with activity, full of the energy of the first day of school. They found a seat by the window and sat down, with steamed buns, fried dough sticks, soy milk, and millet porridge in front of them. Chen Hao took a sip of soy milk, put down the bowl, glanced at his three roommates who were engrossed in their meal, cleared his throat, and said, "Lu Tian, Bai Yu, Fan Xing, there's something I'd like to discuss with you." Upon hearing this, all three looked up at him. Chen Hao organized his thoughts and said directly, "I'm thinking of trying my hand at stock trading recently, but I'm short of startup capital. So, I'd like to borrow some money from you guys." Cough, cough, cough. Dong Letian, who was drinking porridge, choked and coughed until his face turned red. The fried dough stick that Bai Yu had just picked up fell back onto the plate with a plop. Fan Xing's eyes widened, his mouth formed an O shape, and he forgot to put the half-eaten bun in his hand into his mouth. Three people, six eyes, all stared at Chen Hao in disbelief, as if he were an alien, their faces filled with immense shock and astonishment. Chapter 9 borrowed a total of 1.26 million. Dong Letian finally stopped coughing, his face still flushed. He seemed not to have heard clearly, picked at his ear, and stared wide-eyed at Chen Hao. "No. Haozi, what did you just say? What are you going to do? Invest in stocks? Did I hear that right?" Bai Yu adjusted his glasses, his eyes behind the lenses filled with disbelief. "Chen Hao, why did you suddenly decide to invest in stocks? This isn't like you." He always thought Chen Hao was the most reliable and dependable person in their dormitory. Fan Xing picked up the fried dough sticks that had fallen on the table, not even bothering to eat them, and leaned close to Chen Hao, lowering his voice. "Haozi, did something happen to you? Or, did that bastard Su Kaiyang cause you trouble again? If you need money, just tell me, buddy. The stock market is a murky business, let's stay away from it, okay?" Seeing the shocked yet concerned looks on his three roommates' faces, Chen Hao felt a warmth in his heart. He knew they genuinely cared about him. He organized his thoughts and explained, "I wasn't provoked, and Su Kaiyang didn't do anything to me. I just feel that, now that I'm with Zhang Xueyao, there will definitely be a lot of expenses in the future. You all know her family's situation. I don't want to spend her money and want to rely on my own abilities." He paused, then said earnestly, "I want to earn some money to plan for our future. Stock trading is the fastest way I can think of to see results." Of course, he couldn't reveal Zhang Xueyao's pregnancy and the child. It was a secret between him and Zhang Xueyao, and he would never tell anyone without her consent. He didn't want Zhang Xueyao to suffer any unnecessary guidance or pressure. "Wow. That's impressive, Haozi." Dong Letian slapped Chen Hao on the shoulder after hearing this, his face showing admiration. "That's ambitious. You're a real man. You don't want to be a kept man, so you're going to shoulder the burden yourself. I support your idea, bro." Bai Yu nodded, his eyes filled with approval. Indeed, relying on oneself is tough. Fan Xing also gave a thumbs up. "Brother Hao, you have a high level of awareness. I admire you." Despite their praise, the three of them calmed down when it came to the specifics of the operation. Dong Lishan's smile faded, and his tone became more serious. "Haozi, it's good that you have this intention. But I have to tell you the truth, stock trading is no joke. That stuff is too risky. 9 out of 10 people who trade stocks lose money, and only one is breaking even. My dad has a few friends who used to be very arrogant, but they suffered heavy losses in the stock market and have all quieted down now. You'd better think this through." Bai Yu pushed up his glasses and rationally analyzed, "Lu Tian is right. The stock market is greatly influenced by policies, the economic environment, the international situation, and even market sentiment, making it highly volatile. Without years of experience and in-depth research, it is extremely difficult to make a stable profit in this field.
Chunhao, you should really think this through.
Yes, Haozi, Fan Xing also advised. You've only read 2 books, and your theoretical knowledge isn't even solid.
Rushing in like this is no different from throwing money away. Why don't you study some more? Or try playing around with a demo disc first?
Chunhao was grateful for his roommate's sincere advice, but he had absolute confidence in his master-level skills. He couldn't say it outright, so he could only insist, "I appreciate the brother's kindness. However, I have already thought it through. Last night I read those 2 books and I really felt I gained a lot. It was like I suddenly understood a lot more.
I have confidence in stock trading."
He looked at the 3 of them and added, "Besides, I'm not borrowing it for nothing. In this way, I will pay you interest at 3 times the bank interest rate, guaranteeing you won't lose out."
Damn it! What did you say? Dong Letian was immediately displeased, his eyes glaring. Talk about interest? Are you fucking slapping us in the face? Do you think we're loan sharks?
Baiyu also shook his head. "Chunhao, when friends help each other, we don't talk about interest."
Fan Xing waved his hand and said, "That's right. Talking about money hurts feelings. Haozi, if you really want to try, we'll lend you the money.
As for paying it back, you can pay it back whenever you have the money.
There's no rush. We trust you."
Looking at his 3 roommates' selfless and unreserved attitude, Chunhao felt a lump in his throat and was deeply moved.
He nodded emphatically, "Good brother. Thank you. Then I won't stand on ceremony with you." "That's more like it." Dong Letian grinned, then asked, "How much do you need? Name your number, and we'll chip in."
Chunhao thought for a moment and said, "Of course, the more the better.
The more capital you have, the more room you have to maneuver.
I assure you, I will definitely repay this money, and I will certainly give you a satisfactory return."
"Okay. I trust you." Dong Letian patted his chest.
"I've saved up about 50 yuan in pocket money and New Year's money over the years, and I'll lend it all to you." Baiyu adjusted his glasses and did some calculations. "The most I can use is 400,000.
Fan Xing scratched his head, "I need to think about it.
If I sell my game accounts and limited edition figurines, I should be able to raise around 360,000 yuan.
500,000 plus 400,000 plus 360,000, that's 1,260,000. Chunhao was overjoyed.
He originally thought he would be lucky to borrow a few 100,000, but he didn't expect his 3 roommates to be so helpful and raise more than 1,000,000. With the more than 50,000 yuan he saved through frugality, part-time jobs, and scholarships, he plans to keep more than 10,000 yuan in reserve and take out 40,000 yuan. He will have a total of 1.3 million yuan in startup capital. With a principal of 1.3 million yuan, coupled with his master-level stock trading skills, Chunhao seemed to see wealth beckoning to him. He looked at his 3 roommates with emotion, his voice choked with emotion. "Letian, Baiyu, Fan Xing, thank you."
"Thank you so much. No need to thank me." Dong Letian waved his hand dismissively.
"If you ever become successful, don't forget to treat us to the best of everything." Baiyu and Fan Xing nodded with smiles.
"Let's get right to it."
After finishing breakfast, Dong Letian, Baiyu, and Fan Xing immediately took out their phones and operated them for a few minutes. Within minutes, Chunhao's phone received 3 consecutive bank transfer notifications.
Your account ending in XXXX received 500,000 renminbi on X month X day. Balance. Your account ending in XXXX received 400,000 renminbi on X month X day. Balance. Your account ending in XXXX received 360,000 renminbi on X month X day. Balance.
Looking at the long string of numbers on his phone screen, Chunhao's heart raced again.
This isn't a dream, the funding has really arrived.
He gripped his phone tightly, feeling his palms burning. This 1.26 million yuan is not just money, but also the unwavering trust and support of his 3 brothers.
The money's in, Haozi, now it's up to you.
Dong Letian said, putting his arm around Chunhao's shoulder.
Yes.
Chunhao nodded heavily, his eyes filled with determination and confidence. Just then, the preparatory bell for class rang.
Let's go, the first class is about to start. Today is Abbas Miju's class, being late will be terrible.
Fan Xing reminded him. The 4 quickly packed up their plates, hurriedly left the cafeteria, and headed towards the large classroom where they were having class. This was a large professional class held by several classes together, and the classroom was already quite crowded and noisy. The four of them didn't arrive very early, but fortunately there were a few empty seats in the back row, so they quickly went over and sat down. They had just sat down and taken out their books when two more girls walked in through the classroom door. Walking in front was Zhang Xueyo. She wore a light blue dress today, which made her look fresh and elegant, attracting the attention of many boys as soon as she entered. She was accompanied by a female classmate from her dormitory. Dong Letian had the sharpest eyes and spotted them immediately. He was naturally loud and loved to join in the fun, so he immediately waved excitedly towards the door and shouted at the top of his lungs. "Hey! Zhang Xueya! Over here! Chen Hao's here! Come and sit down!" His shout not only reached Zhang Xueyo and her classmates, but also attracted the attention of many other students nearby. Bai Yu and Fan Xing immediately understood, their faces showing mischievous smiles. They very tactfully moved aside, making room for Chen Hao and the two empty seats further inside. Hearing the shout, Zhang Xueyo immediately looked over. When she saw Chen Hao on the empty seat next to him, her cheeks flushed slightly. Under the curious or ambiguous gazes of her classmates, she hesitated for a moment, then gently tugged at the female classmate beside her and walked towards Chen Hao and the others. Chapter 10: An excellent short-selling opportunity. Hearing Dong Lishan's loud greeting, Zhang Xueya's cheeks flushed slightly. Amidst the curious and ambiguous glances from many classmates around her, she hesitated only for a moment before gently pulling her roommate Tian Xinyue and walking towards the back row where Chen Hao and the others were sitting. Since she dared to say those words to Chen Hao in public at the school gate yesterday, she had no intention of hiding it anymore. Now the whole school probably knows that she and Chen Hao are together. Tian Xinyue is a lively girl. Although she is not as stunningly beautiful as Zhang Xueya, she is still pretty and has delicate features. She is the kind of girl whose beauty grows on you. She followed Zhang Xueya over, a mischievous smile on her face, her eyes darting back and forth between Chen Hao and Zhang Xueya. Zhang Xueya walked to the empty seat next to Chen Hao, glanced at him somewhat shyly, and then quietly sat down next to him. Tian Xinyue then naturally sat on the other side of Zhang Xueya. The three people sitting on Chen Hao's other side, Dong Letian, Bai Yu, and Fan Xing, were all winking at Chen Hao, their faces barely able to contain their laughter. As soon as Tian Xinyue sat down, she leaned over Zhang Xueyo and jokingly said to Chen Hao, "Chen Hao, you're something else. You've managed to steal away the prettiest girl in our class, no, the school beauty, without making a sound. Do you even realize that you've become the public enemy of all the boys in our class? No, in our entire college?" She deliberately put on a stern face and said in a half-serious, half-threatening tone, "I'm warning you, if you ever dare to treat our Xueyo badly or cause her even the slightest grievance, all the girls in our class will not let you off the hook." Zhang Xueyo felt even more embarrassed by what she said, and secretly pinched Tian Xinyue's thigh lightly under the desk. Before Chen Hao could reply, Dong Letian, who was standing next to him, objected, immediately sticking his neck out and adopting a stance of going to great lengths for his brother. "Tian Xinyue, what are you saying? Our Haozi is an exceptionally good man. But you lot, don't take advantage of Haozi's honesty." Bai Yu pushed up his glasses and slowly chimed in, "That's right, we absolutely guarantee Chen Hao's character." Fan Xing even exaggeratedly rolled up his non-existent sleeves. "Anyone who dares to cause trouble for our brother Hao will have to ask the three musketeers of Dorm 510 if they agree." Tian Xinyue was no pushover either, and immediately glared at her. "Oh? Protecting your own? It's only natural for us girls to protect our sisters. It's only right for us brothers to protect each other." Snort. Cut. The two sides immediately started arguing back and forth, creating a lively atmosphere. Chen Hao and Zhang Xueyo exchanged a glance, both seeing a hint of helplessness and amusement in each other's eyes. The two of them tacitly avoided joining the argument. Under the desk where no one was watching, Chen Hao quietly reached out and gently took Zhang Xueyo's small hand, which was resting on her lap. Zhang Xueyo's hand trembled slightly, then relaxed, letting him hold it. She even turned the tables, her slender fingers intertwining with his, gripping tightly. A warm, tingling sensation spread from their tightly clasped hands, making them feel sweet and sticky, as if the noise around them had become background noise. Zhang Xueyo turned her head, leaned close to Chen Hao's ear, and asked in a very low voice that only the two of them could hear, "How's it going with raising the funds for your stock trading?" Chen Hao also turned his head and answered in a low voice, "It's done. Latte and the others lent me 1.26 million, and with my own 40,000, I made a total of 1.3 million. 1,300,000? Zhang Xueyo was taken aback. She knew that Chen Hao's 3 roommates came from well-off families, but she didn't expect them to be so generous as to lend so much money at once. She was happy for Chen Hao, but worry also followed.
So much money. Chen Hao, you really need to think this through. What if? Don't worry.
Chen Hao squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with a reassuring certainty.
I know what I'm doing and I won't do anything reckless. Trust me.
Seeing his confident eyes, Zhang Shuiao swallowed back the words of advice that were on the tip of her tongue and nodded gently. Just then, the teacher walked into the classroom with her lesson plan and a water cup.
The previously noisy classroom became much quieter in an instant.
Although there were still some whispers, it was much better than before. Tian Xingyue and Dawn Letian immediately stopped their confrontation, sat down properly, and pretended to look at the podium seriously.
The teacher was a middle-aged woman in her 50s.
She habitually adjusted her glasses and began to lecture from the textbook. Of the students below, it would be good if half of them were listening attentively, the rest were either playing on their phones or chatting quietly. Chen Hao had already studied the content of this lesson on his own, so he was somewhat distracted while listening. His mind is now filled with the 1.3 million yuan in startup capital and master-level stock trading skills. He quietly took out his phone and started downloading a well-known securities company trading app. After downloading, he quickly registered an account, completed real name authentication, and linked his bank card, a series of operations that went smoothly. He had considered this before, as the share market has many restrictions, such as T+1 trading and price fluctuation limits. The trading mechanisms for US and Hong Kong stocks are more flexible, such as T+0 trading, short selling, and small or no price fluctuation limits, which theoretically could lead to higher returns. However, US stock trading hours are mostly in the evening in China, which is not very convenient. Therefore, he decided to start with Hong Kong stocks, as the trading hours are similar to those of a shares, allowing him to trade during the day. Soon, the account was opened, and he transferred all the 1.3 million yuan in his bank card into the newly opened securities account through mobile banking. Looking at the string of heart-pounding numbers displayed on the app's asset interface, Chen Hao took a deep breath, his eyes sharpening. He opened the Hong Kong stock market and began quickly browsing and analyzing individual stocks. With his master-level stock trading skills, he now feels completely different looking at these constantly fluctuating numbers and complex candlestick charts. Those fluctuations that appear chaotic to ordinary people seem to have life and regularity to him. The company's fundamentals, financial data, industry prospects, technical charts, market sentiment, capital flows, a massive amount of information is rapidly processed, integrated, and deduced in his mind. His fingers swiped rapidly across the screen, his eyes were focused, and his brain was like that of a highly efficient supercomputer. He quickly filters information on various stocks, keeping the valuable ones for in-depth analysis and directly passing on those with no potential. Suddenly, his fingers stopped on a Hong Kong stock called Starshine Entertainment. The stock code is 00888. Recently, due to rumors of acquiring an overseas game company, the stock price has risen for more than a week. It seems to be on a strong upward trend, and the market is very optimistic about it. However, with Chen Hao's master-level insight, he keenly sensed something unusual. He quickly accessed the company's more detailed financial reports, recent data on major shareholder changes, and in-depth information about the overseas game company that was rumored to be acquired. Within minutes, he reached a conclusion. The data on this overseas game company's so-called hit games is suspected of being seriously fabricated, and its core team is secretly contacting another competitor. The so-called acquisition benefits are likely a carefully laid trap. Meanwhile, while the stock price of Starshine Entertainment rose over the past week, several major shareholders were secretly and gradually reducing their holdings to cash out. This is a classic pump-and-dump scheme. They used false positive news to drive up the stock price, attracting retail investors to follow suit, and then the major shareholders secretly ran away. Based on the available information and his exceptional market intuition, Chen Hao deduced that this bubble would almost certainly burst soon. Once the market realizes that the acquisition may fail, or that news of falsified game data has been leaked, the stock price will inevitably experience a precipitous drop. He predicts that the stock could fall by more than 20% in the next 2 trading days. Chance. An excellent short-selling opportunity. Short selling involves borrowing shares, selling them, and then buying them back to return them after the share price drops, thus profiting from the price difference. Chen Hao's eyes narrowed, and he no longer hesitated. He immediately opened the trading interface, selected Xinghua Entertainment, and decisively placed an order to short. He used almost all the funds in his account, leaving only a very small portion as a reserve, and kept the leverage within a relatively safe range. Order placed successfully. Looking at the transaction completed status displayed on the transaction interface, Chen Hao slowly exhaled, his eyes flashing with calm and confidence. The stock market hunt has begun.
Chapter 11: 20x Leverage? You're incredibly audacious.
After placing the order, Chen Hao looked at the completed status displayed on the transaction interface and quickly did some mental calculations. He used nearly 1.3 million yuan and chose a leverage ratio of 20. This means that the actual amount of money he was handling reached 26 million. If Starshine Entertainment's stock price does indeed fall by more than 20% in the next 2 days as he predicted, then his short-selling operation will bring him an astonishing profit of more than 4 million. This number made his heart beat slightly faster. This is hundreds or thousands of times faster than the time he used to save money by doing odd jobs and living frugally. Indeed, knowledge, or rather, a system is power, is wealth. He slowly exhaled, calmed himself down, and then turned off his phone screen. He has done what he needed to do. Now he just needs to wait for the market to validate his judgment. Sitting next to him, Zhang Shuiao appeared to be listening to the lecture, but she kept glancing at Chen Hao out of the corner of her eye. She noticed that Chen Hao had been rapidly browsing various stock charts and news on his phone, his fingers constantly swiping and clicking, his expression focused, and she knew he was definitely researching stocks. Seeing that he had put away his phone, seemingly having finished, I couldn't help but turn my head slightly, covering half my face with a book, and ask in a very low voice, "How's it going? Have you finished your stock research?" Chen Hao followed her example, leaned closer, and lowered his voice to reply, "Yes, I've already chosen one and finished the operation."
So fast?
Zhang Shuiao was somewhat surprised. It had only been a short while.
Which stock are you trading? Are you going long or short?
She comes from a well-off family and has been exposed to the world of stocks since childhood, so she understands some basic concepts about stocks.
Star Glory Entertainment, Chen Hao said directly, without hiding anything.
My analysis suggests that this stock will plummet, potentially by more than 20%, so I shorted it.
Star Glory Entertainment? Zhang Shuiao was taken aback. She seemed to vaguely recognize the name.
She immediately and quietly took out her phone and quickly searched for information about the stock under her desk. The information that pops up on the webpage is mostly news reports and stock reviews about Xinghui Entertainment plans to acquire a well-known overseas game company to build a game empire, and Xinghui Entertainment's stock price has soared for several days due to the positive stimulus of the acquisition, and the market prospects are bright. The stock price chart also shows that the stock has indeed risen for more than a week, and the candlestick chart looks quite impressive. Zhang Shuiao frowned slightly as she looked at the information, her heart filled with even more worry. She turned her head, almost touching Chen Hao's ear, her voice filled with urgency and confusion.
Chen Hao, are you sure you're not mistaken? Everyone online is saying this stock has good news and is going up. And the upward trend is quite good. How can you think it's going to plummet and drop by more than 20%? Isn't this a bit too risky? She felt that Chen Hao's judgment was completely contrary to the general opinion in the market. Chen Hao knew she would think that way, since most of the information that ordinary investors can see is only superficially positive. He patiently explained in a very low voice, "On the surface, it does seem like good news. But I've analyzed a few details carefully." He paused, organizing his thoughts to make sure his voice wouldn't carry. "First, I investigated the overseas game company that was to be acquired. Their so-called hit games had some discrepancies between user data and revenue reports, raising suspicions of fraud. Secondly, I noticed that 3 members of this game company's core R&D team have resigned in the past 2 weeks for personal reasons. Furthermore, their latest LinkedIn activity suggests they may be in contact with a competitor of Starshine Entertainment. This is very unusual. Third, and most importantly," Chen Hao lowered his voice even further, "I retrieved the latest data on changes in the shareholding of major shareholders of Starshine Entertainment. It was discovered that during the week or so that the stock price continued to rise, the top 3 shareholders holding more than 5% of the shares were continuously and in small amounts reducing their holdings through different related accounts. Although the amount reduced each time is small and seems very subtle, the total amount added up is not small. This is clearly a scheme to drive up the stock price and then secretly sell off their shares." Zhang Shuiao was stunned. She hadn't expected Chen Hao to analyze so many layers of information in such a short time. Ordinary stock market investors would never delve into these details, or simply have no way of knowing them. But she still felt uneasy and retorted in a low voice, but some of your analyses are still based on speculation. For example, there is no conclusive evidence regarding the falsification of game data or the reasons for team members leaving. What if your judgment is wrong?"
Chen Hao looked at her worried eyes, smiled slightly, and his eyes were full of undeniable confidence.
I trust my judgment. Xu Weiyao, you must have faith in me.
His confidence seemed to have a strange infectious power, which dispelled some of Zhang Shuiyao's doubts. But then a crucial question suddenly occurred to her, and she hurriedly asked, so, did you use leverage in this transaction? In the stock market, leverage is a double-edged sword. It can amplify gains, but it can also accelerate losses.
Chen Hao nodded. I used it. How many times? Zhang Shuiyao's heart jumped. 20 times. What? 20x leverage?
Zhang Shuiyao was so startled she almost jumped up from her seat, her voice rising uncontrollably, sounding particularly abrupt in the otherwise quiet classroom. The teacher, who was writing on the blackboard, stopped writing, adjusted his glasses, and looked over with a puzzled expression. Many students who were daydreaming or playing on their phones turned around and looked curiously at the source of the sound. Chen Hao and Zhang Shuiyao. Tian Xingyue, who was sitting next to Zhang Shuiyao, and Dong Letian, Bai Yu, and Fan Xing, who were on the other side of Chen Hao, all looked over at the same time. Tian Xingyue looked on with a gossipy expression, while Dong Letian and the other two winked at each other, their faces showing knowing smiles, clearly thinking that the young couple had made a commotion by whispering something to each other. Feeling the gazes coming from all directions, Zhang Shuiyao instantly realized that she had lost her composure, and her entire face turned bright red, all the way to her ears. She wished she could disappear into a crack in the ground. She hurriedly lowered her head, burying her face almost completely in the book, pretending to read attentively, while her heart pounded wildly. 20 times leverage. He actually used 20 times leverage. This means that if the stock price fluctuates in the opposite direction by 5%, he could lose all of his principal. This is practically walking a tightrope. Seeing that it was just a minor commotion among the students, the teacher shook his head, said nothing more, and continued the lesson. Once all eyes had shifted away, Zhang Shuiyao dared to slightly raise her head, glaring at Chen Hao with a mixture of shyness and anxiety, and said in a low, reproachful voice, You're incredibly bold. Looking at her embarrassed and adorable appearance, Chen Hao found it amusing yet also a little apologetic, and whispered an apology. It's my fault, I scared you. But don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Zhang Shuiyao looked at his still calm demeanor, opened her mouth as if to say something more, but ultimately swallowed her words. The deed is done, the operation is complete, and it's too late to say anything now. She could only pray silently in her heart, hoping that Chen Hao's judgment was right, hoping that nothing bad would happen. Chapter 12 Zhang Shuiyao's worry, will I be forced to liquidate my position? As soon as the bell rang, the classroom became noisy as students got up, packed their books, and walked out in twos and threes. Zhang Shuiyao, her face still flushed, was led away from the classroom by Tian Xingyue, who was holding her arm. They chatted and laughed in hushed tones, and she seemed too embarrassed to look at Chen Hao again. Chen Hao had just stood up, preparing to go to the classroom for the next class with his roommates, when he was surrounded by Dong Letian, Bai Yu, and Fan Xing. Hey, how's he? Confess. Dong Letian nudged Chen Hao with his elbow, a mischievous grin on his face. What just happened? What scared our school beauty Zhang like that? The noise was so loud the whole class could hear it. You too, did you have a fight? Bai Yu pushed up his glasses, a gossipy glint in his eyes behind the lenses. Yeah, Chen Hao, you had a fight on your very first day together? That won't do. Fan Xing winked and said, Brother Hao, did you bully him? Tell me the truth. Chen Hao was both amused and exasperated by their antics. He irritably pushed away Dong Letian, who was practically pressed against his face, and said, Get lost. Shuiyao and I are doing great, what are you arguing about? He glanced at the classmates who were still walking out and explained in a low voice, She was so agitated just now because of my stock trading. Stock trading, the three exclaimed in unison, their curiosity piqued. Yes, Chen Hao explained simply as he followed the flow of people out. Didn't I borrow money from you to invest in stocks? I already chose my targets during class just now. Holy crap! That was fast. Dong Letian exclaimed in surprise. What did you do? Did you make a profit or a loss? Chen Hao paused for a moment and then said, I've got my eye on a Hong Kong stock called Starshine Entertainment. I think it's going to plummet, so I've shorted it. Short selling? Bai Yu frowned slightly. I seem to remember this stock. Wasn't there some good news recently? It seems to be going up. Yes, Chen Hao nodded and began to explain his analysis in detail. On the surface, it's going up because of the positive news of an acquisition of an overseas game company. However, after careful examination, I found that the core data and financial statements of the game company that was to be acquired did not match up. The user activity and revenue growth rates were abnormal, raising suspicions of fraud. Moreover, several of its core technical staff recently resigned suddenly, with vague reasons given. I checked their whereabouts, and it seems they've been in contact with Starshine Entertainment's competitors. He continued, most importantly, I checked the recent changes in the shareholding of the major shareholders of Starshine Entertainment. Think about it, if there really is such a big positive development and the future looks bright, major shareholders should hold onto their shares and not move, or even increase their holdings. However, I discovered that during these days of continuous stock price increases, the top 3 shareholders with the largest holdings were quietly and gradually reducing their holdings and cashing out through different channels. Although the reductions are small each time and seem subtle, as if they are aimed at maintaining market confidence, the total amount added up is not small. This is clearly not right. I suspect they are using false positive news to drive up the stock price so they can sell their shares at a high price. Chen Hao concluded, therefore, I think this stock will soon be unable to hold on. Once the acquisition fails or news of data fraud comes out, the stock price will definitely plummet. I predict the drop could exceed 20% within 2 days. The 3 of them were stunned. They hadn't expected Chen Hao to analyze so many aspects in such a short time, even uncovering details like the major shareholders' covert reduction of holdings. But as shocked as he was, when it came to the specifics of the operation, Dong Letian immediately grasped the key point, his eyes widening in surprise. Wait. Haozi, you just said Zhang Shuye got excited because of your stock trading. You didn't use a lot of leverage, did you? Chen Hao touched his nose and nodded in acknowledgement. Yes, it was 20 times stronger. 20 times leverage? The 3 of them exclaimed almost simultaneously, drawing the attention of several passing classmates. Dong Letian grabbed Chen Hao's arm, his voice trembling. My goodness. Haozi, are you crazy? 20 times leverage? Is this something you can just play around with? Even a slight increase and you'll be wiped out. No wonder Zhang Shuya was so scared. I'd scream too. Baiyu's expression also turned serious. Chen Hao, this is too risky. The leverage is too high, and the margin for error is almost zero. If your judgment is even slightly off, the consequences will be unimaginable. Fan Xing was so anxious that he kept rubbing his hands together. Brother Hao. Calm down. Why don't we close our positions first? It's okay to earn less, preserving our principal is the most important thing. Still not convinced, Dong Letian immediately took out his phone and searched for the latest news about Starshine Entertainment. The reports that popped up on the screen were mostly optimistic ones, such as the acquisition is progressing smoothly and the stock price is expected to reach a new high. He shoved his phone screen in front of Chen Hao. Haozi, look. The internet is still full of positive news. Your claims about data fabrication, team departures, and shareholder reductions are all just your analysis and speculation. There's no concrete evidence. What if you're wrong? With 20 times leverage, you can't afford to be wrong. Baiyu and Fan Xing also came over to take a look, and they both nodded in agreement, feeling that Chen Hao had been too aggressive this time and that the risk was extremely high. Despite his brother's anxious attempts to dissuade him, Chen Hao was grateful, but he had absolute confidence in his master-level judgment. He patted Dong Letian on the shoulder and looked at the 3 of them with a firm gaze. Letian, Baiyu, Fan Xing, I understand what you mean. But this time, I'm really confident. Trust me, just as I trust you to lend me money without hesitation. This stock is bound to fall. Seeing his resolute attitude, the 3 of them looked at each other and knew that further persuasion would be useless. Dong Letian sighed and patted Chen Hao heavily on the back. All right. You're so confident, I'll trust you this time. But, just in case, something really goes wrong, money aside, don't do anything rash. Baiyu and Fan Xing nodded vigorously. Chen Hao laughed, don't worry, I'm not that fragile. As the 4 of them talked, they arrived at the small classroom for the second period. This is a small, specialized class with only 1 class of students. Chen Hao and his group habitually walked to the last 2 rows and sat down. A short while later, Zhang Shuyo and Tian Xinyue also came in and naturally sat down in the empty seats next to Chen Hao. The blush on Zhang Shuyo's face had faded, but her brows were slightly furrowed, making her look preoccupied. She had barely sat down when she leaned close to Chen Hao, her voice filled with barely concealed worry, and whispered. Chen Hao, I just checked again, and the stock price of Starshine Entertainment seems to have gone up a little again. Are you really sure this is okay? I've heard that high leverage makes it easy to get forced liquidation. Upon hearing this, Chen Hao's heart tightened slightly.
He immediately took out his phone, unlocked the screen, and quickly logged into his securities trading app.
The account interface popped up, and sure enough, the column representing the short position of Starshine Entertainment was followed by a conspicuous yellow warning icon. The floating profit and loss displayed next to it is negative, and the margin ratio is already close to the liquidation threshold set by the brokerage. This means that if the stock price of Starshine Entertainment rises even slightly and touches that red line, the brokerage system will automatically force him to liquidate his position, and his 1.3 million yuan investment will vanish instantly. Zhang Shuiao also caught a glimpse of the warning on her phone screen. Her face paled instantly, and she nervously grabbed Chen Hao's arm. However, Chen Hao showed no sign of panic. He took a deep breath and stared intently at the intraday chart and candlestick chart of Star Glory Entertainment. To the average person, it was just a curve that was still rising slightly. But in Chen Hao's master-level perspective, he clearly captured something different. The upward momentum of the stock price is clearly weakening, while the trading volume is abnormally high. This is a typical characteristic of the final stage of a pump-and-dump strategy. A large number of sell orders are disguised as buy orders, attracting the last batch of followers to enter the market and take over. He could even feel that the thin veil woven with benefits had been stretched to its limit and could tear with a rip at any moment. "Don't worry," Chen Hao turned to Zhang Shuiao, whose face was pale, and gave her a reassuring smile, his tone full of strong confidence. "It's exhausted and won't last much longer. Soon, it will start to fall, and it will fall hard." Looking at Chen Hao's calm and composed eyes, as if he had everything under control, Zhang Shuiao's wildly beating heart inexplicably calmed down a bit. She nodded with some skepticism, but her eyes kept glancing at Chen Hao's phone screen under the desk, and her palms were sweating with nervousness. Chapter 13, 1000x Critical Hit Return, Master-Level Computer Skills. Just then, the teacher, carrying lesson plans and a thermos, walked into the classroom with a serious expression. The classroom, which had been making some rustling noises, instantly fell completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. This class is Data Structures and Algorithms, a core course for computer science majors. The lecturer is a notoriously strict professor. No one dares to use their phone or whisper during class, otherwise they will definitely be called out in front of everyone, and their final grade for participation will be in jeopardy. Chen Hao, Zhang Shuiao, and Dong Letian, Tian Xinyue, and others around them immediately sat up straight, adopting a posture of listening attentively. Zhang Shuiao also quietly nudged Chen Hao's arm, signaling with her eyes for him to stop staring at his phone. Chen Hao smiled at her, then placed his phone screen down on the table to indicate that he understood. But his mind was not on the content of the teacher's lecture at all. He was still thinking about the astonishing discovery he had just made: the system's terrifying boost to stock trading skills. If the system can turn him from a stock trading novice into a master by reading just 2 books, what about his own major, computer science? Will it have the same effect? The moment this thought popped into his head, it grew wildly like weeds, making him itchy with desire. Give it a try. You absolutely have to try it. He quietly took the textbook Data Structures and Algorithms to the table and opened it to the first page. He didn't listen to what the teacher was saying, but instead started reading the book on his own. Upon seeing this, he immediately sensed the difference. He had studied this book before and was very familiar with its content, but reading it again now felt completely different. His reading speed was astonishing. He could read almost 10 lines at a glance. Moreover, he didn't just read, he truly understood and absorbed the information. The complex algorithmic logic, data structure design concepts, and time and space complexity analysis in the textbooks. All the knowledge points became exceptionally clear and simple in his eyes, as if he had always known them and was simply reviewing them. His brain is like a highly efficient sponge, or a supercomputer, frantically absorbing and integrating knowledge. The pages flipped rapidly in his hands, making a soft rustling sound. Sitting next to him, Zhang Shuiao initially thought Chen Hao was seriously preparing or reviewing his lessons, but she quickly realized something was wrong. That's some serious page-turning speed. This isn't reading a book, it's practically just flipping through it for fun. She stole a few glances at Chen Hao and found that his eyes were focused, but he didn't seem to be daydreaming, which made her even more curious and worried. Could it be that he's still worried about that stock? So you're so upset that you can't even concentrate on reading? The more Zhang Shuiao thought about it, the more likely it seemed, and her worries about Chen Hao intensified. Chen Hao was completely oblivious to Zhang Shuiao's concerned gaze. He was completely immersed in this wonderful state of highly efficient learning. In less than 20 minutes, he actually read the entire Data Structures and Algorithms textbook, a book that gives countless computer science students headaches, from beginning to end without missing a single word. The moment he closed the book to the last page, that familiar and pleasant notification sound arrived as expected.
Ding!
Detected that the host has fully read and understood data structures and algorithms.
Congratulations!
You have accumulated 179 computer experience points.
Ding!
Triggered a 10,000x return effect.
You have received a 268x experience bonus.
Refund calculation, 179 points 268 is equal to 47,972 experience points.
Congratulations!
Your computer skill experience points are full, and your level has increased. Current computer skill level, Master 479721000000.
Boom!
Chen Hao felt as if his brain had been cleansed by a clear spring, or as if a huge flow of information had been injected into it. Before acquiring the system, he consistently ranked at the top of his class in computer science courses thanks to his hard work and talent. He possessed solid practical skills and theoretical knowledge, and he self-assessed that he had reached the proficient level. This is already a very good achievement. But to his utter surprise, by simply reviewing the textbook he had already studied, he was able to cross that threshold and enter the master level with the terrifying support of the system.
Master level.
This means that his expertise in the field of computer science has surpassed that of most of his peers and ordinary practitioners, reaching a considerably high level. Whether it's programming skills, algorithm design, system architecture, or problem-solving approaches, there has been a qualitative leap.
This feeling is so amazing. It's simply indescribable.
Chen Hao suppressed the cheers that almost escaped his lips, his fingers trembling slightly with excitement. The system's power once again exceeded his expectations.
That wasn't all.
Having tasted success, Chen Hao didn't pause for a moment and immediately pulled out another core textbook from his bag: Computer Organization and Architecture. He buried himself in the book again, reading even faster than before. Those complex and obscure concepts about computer hardware, instruction sets, CPU architecture, and memory hierarchy now appear as simple and clear to him as 1 + 1 is equal to 2. He flipped through the pages rapidly, his brain working at an unprecedented pace. This time, he only took about 15 minutes to completely digest the book Computer Organization and Architecture. The moment the book was closed, the notification sound rang again.
Ding!
Detected that the host has completely read and understood Computer Organization and Architecture.
Congratulations!
You have accumulated 176 computer experience points.
Ding! Triggered 1000x return effect. You will receive a 1000x experience bonus this time.
Refund calculation, 176 points 1000 is equal to 176,000 experience points.
Congratulations!
Your computer skill experience points are full, and your level has increased. Current computer skill level, Master 1239721000000.
1,000-fold critical hit. 176,000 experience points. He went straight from master level to grandmaster level.
Chen Hao was completely stunned, his mind went blank, and then he was completely overwhelmed by unparalleled joy.
Another master level skill. And it's his major, computer science.
He felt as if his thinking had been infinitely broadened, and his understanding of computer science had reached an unprecedented depth. Many previously vague concepts and insurmountable technical difficulties have now become crystal clear and easily resolved. He even had a feeling that designing a complex operating system kernel independently or developing a completely new programming language wouldn't be an impossible task for him now.
This system, it's simply heaven-defying.
Chen Hao was immersed in immense joy and shock, and an excited smile unconsciously appeared on his face. Even the way he turned the pages of the book was light and quick.
Zhang Xueyao witnessed all of this. She noticed that Chen Hao wasn't listening attentively. Instead, he was rapidly flipping through different computer textbooks one after another. The speed was so fast that it didn't seem like he was studying at all, but rather like he was venting or relieving anxiety.
Moreover, the expression on his face, sometimes focused and sometimes excited, seemed to Zhang Xueyao more like he was preoccupied with stock trading and might even be behaving abnormally due to excessive pressure.
He's definitely worried about that stock. If it really goes bankrupt and he owes over $1 million, he definitely won't be able to handle the blow.
Zhang Xueyao felt more and more heartbroken and angry that Chen Hao shouldn't have taken such a risk by using 20 times leverage. She worried that if Chen Hao continued to daydream like this, he would completely ruin his studies. If you don't listen to such an important course as data structures and algorithms, what will you do in the future?
To risk your future by speculating in stocks is truly a losing proposition. She couldn't watch him continue like this.
Zhang Shuiao pursed her lips, quietly tore a small strip of paper from her notebook, picked up a pen, and quickly wrote a few lines. Then, taking advantage of the moment when the teacher turned around to write on the blackboard, she quickly slipped the note into Chen Hao's hand on the table. Chen Hao was immersed in the ecstasy of possessing a second Grandmaster level skill when he suddenly felt something in his hand. Looking down, he saw a folded piece of paper. He glanced at Zhang Shuiao beside him with some doubt. She was sitting upright, staring straight at the blackboard, as if nothing had happened, but her slightly reddened ears betrayed her.
Chen Hao quietly opened the note under the table. It was written in Zhang Shuiao's neat but slightly hurried handwriting. Chen Hao, stop worrying about stocks. If you really lose money, it's okay, I'll help you pay back the money to Dong Letian and the others. Please pay attention in class, okay? Data structures and algorithms is really important. Don't let stock trading ruin your studies. That would be putting the cart before the horse. Let's face this together, okay? Looking at the note filled with concern and worry, and even willing to take on his huge debts, Chen Hao was stunned at first, then a huge warm current surged in his heart, and he felt both amused and exasperated. This silly girl, it was all a misunderstanding. She thought that her abnormal behavior and lack of attention in class were due to the excessive pressure of stock trading. Chen Hao turned his head and looked at Zhang Shuiao, who was pretending to listen attentively but whose eyes kept glancing at him out of the corner of her eye. He felt both touched and amused. He thought for a moment, then picked up a pen, quickly wrote a line on the back of the note, and quietly handed it back. Chapter 14, earned 150,000 in just one class period? Looking at Zhang Shuiao's delicate yet worried handwriting on the note, Chen Hao felt a warm glow in his heart, as if it had been soaked in lukewarm water. His lips unconsciously curled up into a gentle smile. This silly girl, so that's what she was worried about. He picked up a pen and quickly wrote a reply on the back of the note. Shuiao, don't worry unnecessarily. I'm not worried about stocks, on the contrary, I'm very confident in my judgment. I didn't actually listen to the lectures, but I gained a lot from reading the book just now, which was much more efficient than listening to the lectures. Don't worry, I won't neglect my studies. I guarantee I'll still be number one at the end of the semester. After finishing writing, he secretly slipped the note back into Zhang Shuiao's hand when the teacher wasn't looking. Zhang Shuiao felt the note in her hand, her heart skipped a beat, and she quickly and secretly unfolded it. Upon seeing Chen Hao's reply, she was taken aback for a moment, then frowned slightly. No worries? Is it true that reading books is more rewarding than attending lectures? Is that even possible? Can you understand a course as difficult as data structures and algorithms more thoroughly by reading the book yourself than by listening to a professor's explanation? She was somewhat skeptical. But when she looked up and saw that Chen Hao had already put away his textbooks, placed his hands on the table, and looked at the podium, appearing to be listening attentively, she immediately felt relieved. He listened to advice. It's good that he started paying attention in class. A huge weight was lifted from Zhang Shuiao's heart, and a relieved smile appeared on her face as she refocused her attention on the teacher's lecture. Little did she know that although Chen Hao appeared to be listening attentively to the lesson, his mind was already wandering far away. Having acquired master-level computer skills, he felt that his understanding of the field of computers had reached a whole new level. His experience of reading books like crazy using the system just now made him realize that there are many more ways to make money than just stock trading. Since I can quickly master stock trading skills and make money through the system, why can't I use my own expertise computers to make money? Chen Hao's brain was working at lightning speed. Writing programs? Taking on outsourced projects? These are slow ways to make money, and they're also quite tedious. So, what about developing a game? The moment this thought popped into his head, it was like a bright light being lit in his mind. Game. Mobile games, in particular, can be an extremely profitable industry if done well. The revenue generated by a hit game can be astronomical. Moreover, he now possesses master-level computer skills, making everything from using game engines and writing code to optimizing algorithms and designing the overall game architecture effortless for him. Yes. Let's make games. Chen Hao made a decision immediately. Once he earns his first pot of gold from this stock market venture, and has enough startup capital and confidence, he will begin developing his own game. This will be a more stable and promising way to make money than stock trading. Just as he was engrossed in planning for the future, the bell rang to signal the end of get out of class. Alright, that's all for this lesson. Take a 10-minute break, and we'll have the next lesson here.
After the old professor finished speaking, he took his thermos and left the classroom. The classroom instantly came alive again, with some students getting up to move around and others huddling together to chat. Zhang Shuiao immediately took out her phone and eagerly opened the stock trading app again to check the real-time stock price of Xinhui Entertainment. Upon seeing this, her beautiful eyes widened instantly, and an expression of unbelievable surprise appeared on her face.
Chen Hao! Chen Hao! She excitedly grabbed Chen Hao's arm, her voice rising involuntarily with excitement. It's fallen. It's really fallen. Starshine Entertainment has really fallen. And it's fallen quite a bit.
Her voice was clear and loud, standing out even in the slightly noisy classroom. Instantly, the entire classroom seemed to be muted. Almost all the students, whether they were chatting, playing on their phones, or getting water, stopped what they were doing and their eyes immediately focused on Zhang Shuiao and Chen Hao in the back row of the classroom. Everyone's face was filled with surprise and confusion. What's wrong with Zhang Shuiao today? She suddenly yelled during class this morning, and now she's Starshine Entertainment? What's that? Stocks? Why is she suddenly interested in stocks? Is it related to Chen Hao again? Is he acting strangely when he's in a relationship? She's usually quite quiet and reserved. The students whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with curiosity and inquiry as they looked at Zhang Shuiao and Chen Hao. After all, Zhang Shuiao is usually known in class as a beautiful and elegant girl who doesn't talk much and is very quiet. Her repeated losses of composure today are really unusual. Dong Letian, Baiyu, and Fan Xing, who were sitting not far away, jumped up from their seats as soon as they heard Zhang Shuiao shout, "Xinhui Entertainment has really fallen." They rushed to Chen Hao and Zhang Shuiao's table in a few quick steps. It really dropped? Zhang Shuiao, let us see. Dong Lishan's voice was the loudest, his face flushed with excitement. Baiyu and Fan Xing squeezed to the side, craning their necks. Zhang Shuiao blushed deeply under the gaze of her classmates, so embarrassed she wanted to crawl under the table. But seeing how anxious Dong Letian and the others were, she turned her phone screen towards them, pointed to the clearly downward curve, and whispered, "Look, it really dropped." The three looked closely, and sure enough, on the stock price chart of Starshine Entertainment, a dark line is clearly visible, with a drop of more than 3%. And judging from the trend, it's still going down. Damn! You're awesome, Haozi. Dong Letian excitedly slapped Chen Hao on the back, the force making Chen Hao grimace. You were right. It fell. It really fell. Baiyu also let out a long sigh of relief, pushed up his glasses, and showed an admiring expression on his face. Chen Hao, your judgment was amazing. Fan Xing rubbed his hands together excitedly, Brother Hao. From today onwards, you are my only brother. That was so right. They all knew that Chen Hao was shorting the stock, and that Chen Hao would make money when the stock price fell. Quick! Haozi! Take a look and see how much you've earned. Dong Letian urged impatiently, even more excited than if he were making money himself. Baiyu and Fan Xing, along with Tian Xinyue who had just joined them, all stared at Chen Hao with wide eyes, their faces full of curiosity and anticipation. Zhang Shuiao, no longer caring about being shy, stared intently at Chen Hao with her beautiful eyes. Surrounded by them, Chen Hao looked at their expectant faces and smiled helplessly. He took out his phone, unlocked it, and logged into the securities app again. The account interface pops up. When that number representing the floating profit clearly came into everyone's view. 150,000? Oh my god. So fast? Several suppressed gasps rang out at the same time. Zhang Shuiao, Dong Letian, Baiyu, Fan Xing, and Tian Xinyue were all stunned. Their mouths were agape, and their eyes were glued to the number, as if they couldn't believe their eyes. How long has it been? It's only the time of one class period. Chen Hao's initial investment of 1.3 million yuan has already yielded a floating profit of 150,000 yuan? The speed at which they make money is terrifying. That's faster than robbing a bank. Of course, this is just an exaggerated thought born of their shock. The other students in the classroom who were curiously looking around, although they couldn't hear the specific numbers, felt an itch to see Zhang Shuiao and Dong Lishan's shocked and speechless expressions. What exactly are Chen Hao and Zhang Shuiao up to? Being mysterious and jumpy? Chapter 15, Making Money by Developing Games. The school bell rang again, and the third period began. This is also an important professional course, but a different teacher has taken the stage, and the requirements are just as strict. Most students focused their attention and prepared to listen to the lesson. However, university classrooms are more relaxed than high school classrooms. As long as it doesn't affect others, teachers usually turn a blind eye to what students do in class. Therefore, you can still see some students secretly using their phones or reading novels. If it were the old Chen Hao, he would definitely have been the one listening attentively in class. He knew that learning opportunities were hard-won and that not a single minute should be wasted. But now, the situation is different. His mind was filled with thoughts of how to make more money quickly and legally. The thought of giving Zhang Shuiao and her child a stable and comfortable future burned like a fire in his heart. Moreover, he possesses the incredible cheat code of the system, which allows him to master or even surpass the course requirements in a very short time through self-study, even without attending classes, so he has no need to worry about his studies. Therefore, he felt almost no psychological burden and took out his phone again. But this time, he wasn't looking at stocks. Since Star Glory Entertainment has already started to decline, the trend is established, and he only needs to patiently wait for the harvest, without having to constantly monitor the market. His finger slid across the screen as he began searching online for information about game development, his mind racing as he considered what kind of game he should develop. Large-scale AAA games are definitely out of the question, the development cycle is too long and the investment is too large. Small indie games? The gameplay needs to be innovative, development needs to be fast, and it's best to attract a large number of users in a short period of time to generate buzz and cash flow. He used his master-level computer skills to quickly filter through feasible solutions. Various game types, gameplay, and themes collide and combine in his mind. Suddenly, an idea flashed into my mind. The Investiture of the Gods theme. This genre is well known, with a rich cast of characters and a grand setting, but it doesn't require rebuilding the world building like science fiction or fantasy, saving a lot of trouble with background introductions. Auto chess gameplay. This gameplay style has become very popular in recent years. It is highly strategic, has a certain element of luck, and is easy to get hooked on. Moreover, the game structure is relatively fixed, making it much simpler and faster to develop than large-scale RPGs or action games. Right. Let's make an auto chess game based on the classic Chinese mythology of the gods. Players use various gods and demons from the Investiture of the Gods as chess pieces, designing different factions, professions, and skills. Players recruit, arrange formations, and combine items to fight against other players. With his goal clear, Chen Hao no longer hesitated. He opened a dedicated coding app on his phone, created a new project file named FSCQX, the initials of the Pinyin for Function Auto Chess, and started typing on the screen. With master-level computer skills, writing game code is as natural as breathing for him. Before he even put pen to paper, he had already formed a clear blueprint in his mind for the game's overall architecture, module division, algorithm logic, and even the management and optimization of ARC resources. What he needs to do now is to implement these ideas line by line through code. However, writing code on a mobile phone is indeed not very convenient. The virtual keyboard was too small, which severely limited his typing speed and output efficiency. He typed code for about 10 minutes, his fingers starting to ache, but the progress was slower than he had expected. He stopped, moved his fingers a little, and prepared to take a breather before continuing. The moment he stopped, that familiar notification sound in his mind rang again. Ding! Host detected typing practice. Congratulations! You have accumulated 15 typing experience points. Ding! Triggered a 10,000x return effect. You have received a 168x experience bonus. Refund calculation, 15 points 168 is equal to 2,520 experience points. Congratulations! Your typing skill experience points are full, and your level has increased. Current typing skill level, proficient 2420 10,000. Chen Hao was stunned, holding his phone. Typing? Is this considered a skill? And you can also get an experience critical hit refund? He had never thought of this possibility before. This system is far too comprehensive. It's practically an all-powerful cheat. Proficient typing skills? I wonder how effective it will be. His curiosity was piqued, so he immediately reopened the code editor to test the effect. This time, when his fingers touched the virtual keyboard again, it felt completely different. My fingers seemed to become exceptionally flexible and precise, requiring no visual input of the keyboard. I relied entirely on muscle memory and a strange intuition. Whatever code comes to mind, my fingers can type it out almost simultaneously, at a speed several times faster than before. And the error rate is extremely low. Crackling and popping. A series of rapid and crisp virtual keyboard clicks rang out beneath his fingertips, and lines of code rapidly increased and expanded on the screen at a speed visible to the naked eye. This feels so smooth. That was awesome. The feeling of stagnation I had just experienced vanished, replaced by a smooth and exhilarating sensation. Efficiency has increased by more than 2 or 3 times. Chen Hao was overjoyed. This system was truly full of surprises. He was completely immersed in the pleasure of efficient typing and forgot all about his surroundings. Zhang Shuiao, who was sitting next to him, had been keeping an eye on Chen Hao since the start of class. Sure enough, he started playing on his phone again, and this time it wasn't about stocks. His fingers were tapping around on the screen, doing something I couldn't tell. His brows were sometimes furrowed and sometimes relaxed, and he looked completely absent-minded. The weight that had just been lifted from her heart was lifted again. Why is he doing this again? This class is also very important. Zhang Shuiao looked at the teacher on the podium who was earnestly explaining the key points and difficult points, and then looked at Chen Hao next to her who was completely immersed in his own world. She felt both anxious and helpless. She remembered Chen Hao's note saying reading books will bring you more benefits, but he was clearly playing on his phone now, not reading at all. After hesitating for a moment, she tore off a piece of sticky note, picked up a pen, her delicate eyebrows furrowed slightly, and wrote a few lines. Then, taking advantage of the moment when the teacher turned around, she quickly pushed the note next to Chen Hao's phone. Chen Hao was coding furiously when he felt something bump into him. He looked down and saw another familiar note. He sighed helplessly. He knew what was written inside without even looking. He picked up the note and unfolded it. Sure enough. Chen Hao, this lesson covers the core exam points, which are really important. Stop playing on your phone and concentrate on the lesson, okay? I know you're smart, but what the teacher is saying is the essence. You'll miss a lot if you try to read the book on your own. Please, just listen for a moment. The words were filled with concern and a hint of pleading. Chen Hao looked at the note, feeling complicated. He was touched by Zhang Shuiao's constant concern for him, but he also had a headache about how to explain what he was doing and his confidence in not needing to attend classes at all. He turned his head and met Zhang Shuiao's beautiful eyes, which were filled with worry and a hint of reproach. After thinking about it, he decided to try to appease her first. Chapter 16, 999x Critical Hit Return, Master Level Typing Skill. Looking at Zhang Shuiao's note filled with worry, Chen Hao felt both touched and somewhat helpless. He knew she meant well, but he simply couldn't do what she expected. He picked up a pen and quickly wrote on the back of the note. Shuiao, you really don't need to worry about me. I assure you, it will absolutely not interfere with your studies. If your final grades are bad, you can do whatever you want with them. I have very important things to do right now, trust me, okay? After writing it, he quietly pushed the note back to Zhang Shuiao and gave her a smile that was both apologetic and very firm. He then looked down again, picked up his phone, and began typing rapidly on the screen, continuing his coding endeavor. When Zhang Shuiao saw his reply and saw that he had returned to his phone almost without hesitation, she felt a surge of helplessness and deep disappointment. Something very important? More important than class? She looked at Chen Hao's focused profile, her lips slightly pursed. What on earth is making him so obsessed that he's even ignoring his lessons? She decided that after class, she would definitely find an opportunity to have a good talk with Chen Hao. We can't let him continue to be addicted to this. Chen Hao was completely focused at that moment. With his master-level computer skills, writing the game code for Function Auto Chess was simply a game changer. The core architecture of the game, the design of character attributes, the combat logic, the economic system, all the modules were crystal clear in his mind. What he needed to do now was to turn these ideas into code. However, typing on a mobile phone remains a bottleneck. Even though he possesses proficient typing skills and his typing speed far exceeds that of ordinary people, he still feels that his fingers cannot keep up with the speed of his brain's thinking. He continued typing for about 10 more minutes, feeling that there was still room for improvement in efficiency. Just as he slowed down slightly, preparing to take a sip of water and rest. Ding! Host detected typing practice. Congratulations! You have accumulated 16 typing experience points. Ding! Triggered a 10,000x return effect. You have received a 999x experience bonus. Refund calculation, 16 points 999 times equals 15,984 experience points. Congratulations! Your typing skill experience points are full, and your level has increased. Current typing skill level, Master 14404, 100000.
999x critical hit? Grandmaster level?
Holding his phone, Chen Hao was frozen in place, his eyes wide open, his heart filled with immense joy.
This system is amazing. It can even boost typing skills to the Grandmaster level? He couldn't wait to try it out. When his fingers landed on the virtual keyboard again, an unprecedented feeling washed over him. His 10 fingers seemed to transform into 10 phantoms with independent consciousness, requiring no instructions from the brain. It was a completely instinctive, limitless dance. Tap 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 tap. A series of crisp, melodious tapping sounds, almost forming a continuous line, burst forth from his fingertips like a sudden storm. Fast. Extremely fast. On the phone screen, lines of code seemed to be under a spell, increasing and scrolling at an unprecedentedly terrifying speed. The speed was so fast that even he was momentarily dazzled. His brain used to be able to think ahead of his fingers, but now his fingers are moving faster than his thoughts. Fortunately, his master-level computer skills allowed him to keep up with the brain, otherwise, the comical situation of too fast a hand speed and brain crash would have occurred. This feeling is so exhilarating. It's simply art. Zhang Xueyao, who was sitting next to him, had been paying attention to Chen Hao from the very beginning. Seeing that he was indeed playing on his phone again, his fingers moving non-stop, I felt both angry and aggrieved. Who is he chatting with? He's so engrossed in it, he's even ignoring his class. A bad thought suddenly crept into her mind. Could it be that he's chatting with another girl? He's cheating on me? The thought clenched her heart, and a wave of bitterness and panic washed over her. She couldn't help but secretly turn to the side, pretending to fix her hair, but her eyes quickly glanced at Chen Hao's phone screen. That glance left her completely stunned. What she saw first was not a chat interface, but a professional-looking app interface code editor filled with dense English text and symbols. Chen Hao wasn't chatting. Immediately afterwards, her gaze was drawn to Chen Hao's fingers. Are those still human fingers? Quick! That's too fast. She couldn't see the specific movements of Chen Hao's fingers at all she could see was a dazzling blur of afterimages dancing wildly on the phone screen, accompanied by a series of almost continuous, crisp, and somewhat jarring tapping sounds. What terrifying hand speed! Zhang Xuya was so surprised that her mouth was slightly open, and she couldn't close it for a long time. She had never seen, or even imagined, that anyone could type at such an inhuman speed on a mobile phone's virtual keyboard. What is he doing? Writing code? Does writing code need to be this fast? The immense shock temporarily overwhelmed her previous jealousy and worry. Zhang Xuyao's mind was filled with question marks and exclamation points. She tried to see what Chen Hao was writing, but the code scrolled too fast for her eyes to keep up. She could only see a string of characters moving rapidly upwards, and she couldn't understand the content at all. Although she didn't understand the situation, at least she was certain that Chen Hao wasn't chatting with someone else, and the huge weight that had been on Zhang Xuyao's mind about cheating was finally lifted. But what followed was a deeper curiosity and a touch of bewilderment. What exactly is Chen Hao doing? When did he become such a good typist? Chen Hao was completely oblivious to his girlfriend's complex emotional journey. He was fully immersed in the ultimate efficiency brought about by his master-level typing skills. With such terrifyingly fast hand speed, the code for function AutoChess was perfected at an astonishing pace. The core module, which was originally expected to take a long time to complete, was actually typed out by him in less than 20 minutes. When the last character was entered, Chen Hao breathed a sigh of relief and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. The core code framework of the game has been built. What remains are some details to fill in, resource imports, and testing and optimization. He plans to transfer the code to his computer after returning to his dorm before proceeding with the next steps, and then he can consider uploading it to the game platform. He checked the time. There were still more than 10 minutes until get out of class ended. Since he had nothing better to do, he simply took out the textbook for this class operating systems from his bag. He switched back to book reading mode, his fingers rapidly turning the pages, his eyes scanning each line of text like a scanner. With his master-level computer skills, reading these professional books is like a college student reading an elementary school textbook. In less than 10 minutes, he had scanned the thick textbook on operating systems from beginning to end. The moment he closed the book, the notification sound rang precisely on time. Ding! Detected that the host has fully read and understood operating systems. Congratulations! You have accumulated 163 computer experience points. Ding! Triggered a 10,000x return effect. You have received a 666x experience bonus. Refund calculation 163.666 times equals 108,558 experience points. Current computer skill experience Grandmaster 231,931 million. I gained over 100,000 experience points. Although there were still more than 700,000 experience points to go before reaching the next epic level, the feeling of watching the experience bar rise rapidly still made him happy. He put down his book, feeling that the class had been incredibly fulfilling. Not only was the core code 4 function auto chess basically completed, but my typing skills also soared to the master level. I also took a core professional course and my computer skills and experience increased significantly. However, to Zhang Xueyao, who was standing next to him, all of this appeared to be Chen Hao constantly playing on his phone throughout the entire class. First, I frantically typed I don't know what I was doing, then I quickly flipped through the textbook as if I was just going through the motions. Seeing Chen Hao's seemingly satisfied expression, she made up her mind, I have to have a serious talk with him after class. This can't go on. Chapter 17 Did you borrow Nez's wind fire wheels to pull that out? As soon as the bell rang, the atmosphere in the classroom instantly became relaxed. After all the morning classes ended, the students packed up their things. Most of them chatted and laughed as they walked toward the cafeteria, while some who were better off went off campus in small groups to have a better meal. Let's go, let's go. I'm starving. Haozi, Xiaobai, Xingxing, let's go to a restaurant, it's on me. Dong Letian haphazardly stuffed his books into his school bag while shouting loudly. Bai Yu and Fan Xing naturally had no objections. Chen Hao nodded, okay. Just as the four of them were about to leave, they saw Zhang Xueya naturally stand next to Chen Hao, and Tian Xingyue also took Zhang Xueya's arm, as if she wanted to follow along. Dong Lishan's eyes lit up, and he immediately said with a grin, hey, you two beauties, want to join us? It's more fun with more people. Zhang Xueya glanced at Chen Hao, and seeing that he didn't object, she smiled and nodded, okay. Tian Xingyue readily agreed, if a tycoon is treating, of course I'll go. So the group of 6 walked out of the school together. Walking down the street, Zhang Xueya finally couldn't hold back any longer and asked the question she had been holding in for the entire class. She gently tugged at Chen Hao's sleeve and asked softly, Chen Hao, you were writing code the whole time during class, what were you doing? Chen Hao didn't intend to hide anything and said directly, I plan to write a game myself, upload it to a game platform after it's finished, and see if I can make some money. His words stunned not only Zhang Xueyao, but also Dong Letian, Bai Yu, Fan Xing, and Tian Xingyue, who were listening intently. They all turned to look at him, their faces filled with surprise. Write a game? Dong Letian was the first to exclaim, his voice booming. Haozi, are you out of your mind? Making money by writing games? That sounds like a ridiculous idea. Bai Yu adjusted his glasses and rationally analyzed, Chen Hao, game development is a very complex system engineering project, involving multiple aspects such as planning, programming, art, music, and testing. It usually requires a team to work together to complete. Although we studied computer science, game development is very different from the courses we took, and we have no practical project experience. You alone, isn't that a bit too difficult? He phrased it tactfully, but his meaning was clear, he wasn't optimistic. Fan Xing scratched his head and said, yeah, brother Hao, I know you're good at programming, but developing games independently, that sounds like a dream. Of all the games on the market, only a very few can make money. Investing so much time and energy could very well result in losing everything in the end. Although Tian Xingyue didn't understand the technology, she nodded in agreement, that's right, Chen Hao, writing games isn't that easy. My cousin works as a game designer. He works overtime every day and is almost bald. He still says it's hard to say whether the project will succeed. You're still a student, don't try to get rich overnight. Zhang Xueya looked worried and gently pulled Chen Hao's arm, saying, Chen Hao, I know you want to make money, but this path is too risky. We are still students and should prioritize our studies. And I don't want you to work too hard or be under too much pressure. She was genuinely afraid that Chen Hao would embark on an overly difficult, potentially disastrous, path because of his eagerness to make money. Faced with the unanimous pessimism and worry from the 5 people, Chen Hao simply smiled, his tone calm yet carrying an undeniable confidence. I have already taught myself the relevant knowledge and technology, so developing this game shouldn't be a problem for me. As for whether it can make money. He paused for a moment, then continued, once I finish making the game and upload it to the platform, you'll know for sure. How will you know it won't work if you don't try? Seeing his resolute attitude, the 5 of them looked at each other and knew that it would be useless to persuade him any further.
Dong let inside and patted Chen Hao on the shoulder. Alright, Haozi, it's good that you have ideas.
I'm rooting for you, bro. Don't hesitate to ask if you need any help.
Baiyu and Fan Xing nodded, though they still felt uneasy, but said nothing more. Looking at Chen Hao's confident profile, Zhang Shuiao swallowed back the words of advice that were on the tip of her tongue. She simply squeezed his hand gently, her eyes still filled with lingering worry. Then they arrived at a mid to high-end restaurant that looked quite nice. Dong Letian, familiar with the place, asked for a small private room. After they sat down, they took the menu and ordered a bunch of dishes. After ordering, while waiting for the food to arrive, Zhang Shuiao thought of Chen Hao's unbelievable typing speed and couldn't help but ask curiously.
By the way, Chen Hao, how come you type so fast?
I secretly peeked during class, and it was so fast that it was almost blurry.
You type fast?
Dong Letian, with his sharp ears, immediately became interested and leaned closer to ask.
How fast?
Faster than my hand speed after being single for 18 years, he said, waving his fingers in a lewd manner. Baiyu, Fan Xing, and Tian Xinyue also looked at Zhang Shuiao with curiosity. Zhang Shuiao recalled the scene she saw at the time and described it as follows. It was incredibly fast. It felt like his fingers were wound up like a toy. I could only see a blur of motion, and the tap 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 sound was so continuous that I was worried he'd smash the phone screen.
Could wound up? And all you can see is a shadow? Dong Letian burst out laughing.
Zhang Shuiao, I know your boyfriend is amazing, but this description is way too exaggerated. Even the saying beauty is in the eye of the beholder doesn't apply here. Baiyu also shook his head with a smile. The virtual keyboard on a mobile phone has great limitations.
Theoretically, the maximum hand speed it can reach is far less than that of a physical keyboard.
Shuiao, the kind of speed you're describing is unlikely. Fan Xing and Tian Xinyue both had expressions that said, you must be kidding me, believing that Zhang Shuiao was just being biased because she liked Chen Hao. Seeing that no one believed her, Zhang Shuiao got a little anxious and stomped her foot. I really wasn't exaggerating. If you don't believe me, let him demonstrate it on the spot.
Yes.
Haozi, give us one.
Dong Letian immediately egged them on.
Let us guys see what kind of godlike hand speed could stun our school beauty Zhang like this. Baiyu, Fan Xing, and Tian Xinyue joined in the cheering. One more. Chen Hao, exasperated by their noise, smiled helplessly and said, Fine, let's do the demonstration.
He took out his phone, unlocked it, and randomly opened a notepad app.
Everyone's eyes were instantly drawn to his fingers and the phone screen. Chen Hao took a deep breath and then hovered his thumbs over the virtual keyboard.
The next second.
Tap 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 tap. A burst of rapid, high-frequency, sharp knocking sound suddenly erupted, so dense that individual syllables were indistinguishable, like a sudden storm, almost forming a continuous chorus. His thumbs really did turn into two blurry afterimages, dancing rapidly above the phone screen. The speed was so fast that the naked eye couldn't even capture the exact trajectory of the falling finger. The text on the phone screen was increasing and scrolling at an astonishing speed. It doesn't appear word by word at all, but rather it pops out in paragraphs or even line by line. Dong Lishan's smile froze instantly, his mouth opened into an O shape, and his eyes almost popped out. Baiyu adjusted his glasses, leaned forward, and stared intently at Chen Hao's fingers and the screen, his face filled with disbelief and shock, as if he had witnessed something that defied the laws of physics.
Fan Xing was completely dumbfounded, rubbing his eyes repeatedly, wondering if he was hallucinating.
Tian Xinyue was so shocked that she covered her mouth and let out a soft gasp. My God. The four people who had just thought Zhang Shuiao was exaggerating were now frozen in place, their faces filled with the same shock and disbelief.
Is this even human hand speed?
This is practically a heartless typing machine. No, even a machine isn't that fast. Seeing the stunned expressions on the four people's faces, Zhang Shuiao finally felt a little better. She slightly raised her chin, a hint of smugness in her expression.
See? I told you I wasn't exaggerating.
Several seconds passed before Dong Letian was the first to come to his senses.
He gasped sharply, pointing at Chen Hao with a trembling voice. Holy crap! Haozi! You're a monster, aren't you? This hand speed, how did you train? Are you cheating?
Baiyu swallowed hard and murmured, incredible.
This is completely beyond the physiological limits of normal humans. Chen Hao, how did you do that?
Fan Xing was completely dumbfounded, his mouth agape in a comical expression, before he finally gasped and blurted out.
Holy crap! How ge? Are you even human? Did you borrow Nez's wind fire wheels for that hand? It's a tentacle monster?
Tian Xinyue nodded repeatedly, looking at Chen Hao as if he were an alien.
Chapter 18. You're practically a human scanner.
Just as Dong Letian and his friends were surrounding Chen Hao, shouting and asking him to teach them the secrets of after-image hand speed, the door to the private room was pushed open, and a young female waitress walked in carrying a tray with several dishes on it. She had just walked in when she saw Chen Hao, in an attempt to prove his innocence, his fingers dancing across the phone screen like a phantom. The rapid, almost unbearable tapping and the incredibly fast finger movements instantly drew all her attention. The waitress stared in disbelief, her eyes wide and her mouth slightly agape, frozen in place at the doorway. She works at this restaurant and has seen all sorts of customers, but she has never seen anyone type at such an inhuman speed on a mobile phone. Is this a magic trick? She was so engrossed in watching that she forgot she was holding a heavy tray. Her arm went limp, the tray tilted violently, and the dishes on it were about to slip and shatter. Watch out! Bai Yu, who was closest to the door, reacted quickly and stepped forward to steady the tray. The waitress suddenly snapped out of her daze, her face turning pale with fright. She repeatedly apologized, "I'm so sorry. I was daydreaming." She hurriedly and carefully carried the dishes on the tray to the table, but her eyes couldn't help but sneak glances at Chen Hao, who had already put away his phone, her eyes filled with surprise and disbelief. After the waitress left the private room with a blush on her face, Dong Letian couldn't wait to ask Chen Hao, "Howzy, how did you do that?" Chen Hao smiled and said, "It's nothing, it's just, practice makes perfect." His explanation was clearly not convincing at all. Dong Letian immediately questioned, "Howzy, don't give me that. Practice makes perfect? I play games and press the keyboard every day, how come I'm not that skilled? You'd better confess honestly, have you secretly practiced some kind of unparalleled martial arts skill?" Bai Yu looked at Chen Hao thoughtfully. "This hand speed has exceeded the normal range of proficiency. It's more like the result of some kind of talent or special training." Fan Xing and Tian Xinyue nodded in agreement, clearly not believing the simple explanation of practice makes perfect. Although Zhang Shuiyao didn't speak, her gaze towards Chen Hao was full of inquiry. She felt that Chen Hao had been shrouded in a mysterious aura lately. Whether it was his terrifyingly accurate stock market judgment or his unbelievable typing speed, everything seemed so extraordinary. Chen Hao could only smile helplessly and change the subject. "The food is here, let's eat first and chat while we eat." Only then did everyone suppress their curiosity and begin to eat. During the meal, Tian Xinyue thought of her morning classes and couldn't help but offer some advice. "Chen Hao, I know you want to make money now, whether it's investing in stocks or developing games, it's your freedom. However, class time is really precious, and the teachers teach the essential knowledge. I think you can do these things in your spare time, and it's best not to take up class time, otherwise it might really interfere with your studies." Her words expressed the feelings of Zhang Shuiyao and her 3 other roommates. With a piece of braised pork stuffed in his mouth, Dong Letian mumbled in agreement, "Yes, Howzy, Xinyue is right. Making money is important, but we are students after all, and our studies are the most important thing. If you do these things in class and fail the course, that would be a case of losing more than you gain." Bai Yu and Fan Xing both nodded in agreement. Zhang Shuiyao looked at Chen Hao with expectant eyes, hoping he would listen to her advice. Faced with his friend's earnest advice, Chen Hao put down his chopsticks, looked at them, and said very seriously, "Thank you for reminding me. However, you really don't need to worry about your studies." He paused, then explained, "Although I didn't seem to pay attention in the classes today, I actually read through the textbooks for all those courses on my own, and..." He smiled, his tone carrying an undeniable confidence, "I'll memorize it perfectly. It definitely won't affect my final exams." "You finished reading it? And you know it by heart?" Dong Letian was the first to express disbelief, pointing to the table. "Take the operating systems course we just had, for example. It's such a thick book, and you just flipped through it for a little while in class and you think you finished it? And you even remembered it? You're kidding me." Bai Yu also shook his head. "Chen Hao, memory and understanding are 2 different things. There's a huge difference between quickly skimming through something and truly understanding and mastering it." Zhang Shuiyao went even further, saying, "You know how difficult the course operating systems is. The concepts are abstract and the knowledge points are complicated. How could you possibly memorize it after just one reading? Chen Hao, we know you're smart, but you can't do this." She was too embarrassed to say the word bragging. Tian Xinyue and Fan Xing both had expressions that said, "You must be joking." Seeing that they didn't believe him, Chen Hao wasn't angry. Instead, he revealed a somewhat mischievous smile.
Since none of you believe me, how about this? I'll recite the entire book operating systems to you right now. How about that? Recite? The whole book?
Upon hearing this, all 5 people were stunned, and then an even more incredulous expression appeared on their faces.
Howsy, are you alright? Dong Letian reached out to touch Chunhao's forehead. You don't have a fever? Why are you talking nonsense? Baiyu frowned. Shenhao, this joke isn't funny at all. How could anyone possibly memorize an entire textbook on operating systems, which has hundreds of thousands of words? Zhang Shuiao also felt that Chen Hao's words were too absolute. She pursed her lips, took out the thick textbook operating systems from her bag, placed it on the table, and looked at Chen Hao. Okay, then you can memorize it. Let's start with the first chapter. Her tone carried a hint of challenge, but also a hint of hope that Chen Hao would back down. Tian Xinyue, Dong Letian, Baiyu, and Fan Xing all immediately put down their chopsticks, their eyes all focused on Chen Hao, waiting to see how he would handle the situation. Dong Letian had even prepared his sarcastic remarks. Chen Hao took a deep breath, not looking at the book, but calmly gazing ahead as if staring at words in the void. Then he began to recite in a steady and clear voice. Chapter 1, Introduction to Operating Systems. 1.1 The Goals and Functions of an Operating System. A computer system consists of 2 parts, hardware and software. The operating system is the first layer of software configured on computer hardware, representing the initial expansion of the hardware system. Its main objectives are convenience, effectiveness, scalability, and openness. As soon as he started reciting, Zhang Shuiao subconsciously opened her textbook and found the corresponding chapter. When she saw that Chen Hao's recitation was exactly the same as the words in the book, her pupils contracted sharply, and her hand holding the book trembled slightly. How is this possible? Seeing this, Dong Letian, Baiyu, Fan Xing, and Tian Xinyue immediately came over. The 4 of them huddled together, their eyes fixed on the pages of the book in Zhang Shuiao's hand, their ears perked up, listening to Chen Hao's recitation. 1.2 The Development Process of Operating Systems. Phase 1 Manual Operation. Phase 2 Batch Processing System. Single-Channel Batch Processing System. Multi-Channel Batch Processing System. Chen Hao recited without the slightest pause, his recitation flowing as smoothly as if he were reading aloud. He eloquently explained those complex concepts, development stages, and characteristics with precise language. The private room was so quiet that only Chen Hao's clear recitation could be heard, along with the increasingly heavy breathing of the other people. Dong Lishan's mouth opened wider and wider, big enough to fit an egg. He glanced at the book, then at Chen Hao, who was reciting with his eyes closed and looking completely at ease, and felt as if he were dreaming. Baiyu's expression shifted from initial doubt to shock, and then to a near-numb blankness. He adjusted his glasses, his fingers unconsciously tracing the pages, confirming each word. This completely overturned his understanding of memory. Fan Xing stared blankly, muttering unconsciously, "Holy crap, it's exactly the same word, what the hell? How are you even human?" Tian Xinyue was so shocked that she covered her mouth, looked at the book, then at Chen Hao, her eyes filled with horror and disbelief. This is practically a superpower. Zhang Shuia's heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was going to jump out of her chest. She looked at Chen Hao's calm profile, feeling it was both so unfamiliar and so dazzling. How did he do that? This is something no human being could do. Chen Hao recited for nearly 20 minutes straight, covering a large portion of the first 4 chapters of operating systems, including the key and difficult points the teacher had discussed in class today. When he finally stopped, picked up his water glass, and took a sip, the private room fell into a deathly silence. 5 people, 10 eyes, stared at him as if he were a monster, their expressions a mixture of extreme shock, bewilderment, and helplessness at the complete shattering of their worldview. After a long while, Dong Le finally let out a breath, as if he had just finished running a marathon, his voice hoarse as he broke the silence. A monster, an absolute monster. Baiyu took a deep breath, trying to remain calm, but his voice still trembled. Chen Hao, you've gone beyond just having a good memory, you're practically a human scanner. Fan Xing slumped into the chair, groaning weakly. Brother Hao, please give me a break, I can't beat you in studying, I can't beat you in stock trading, and now even my memory is completely crushed by you, what's the point of me living? Tian Xinyue looked at Chen Hao with a complicated expression, which finally turned into a long exclamation. Chen Hao, you are really too terrifying. Zhang Shuiao didn't speak. She just stared blankly at Chen Hao. All her previous worries and advice seemed so pale and ridiculous in the face of this undeniable fact.
She finally understood that Chen Hao's previous statements about gaining more from reading and not interfering with studies were not empty words, but rather a genuine ability he possessed that far exceeded the imagination of ordinary people.
How many secrets is he still hiding?
Looking at her boyfriend, who was both familiar and unfamiliar to her, Zhang Shuya felt a tremendous shock and an indescribable sense of pride.
Chapter 19, Earned 310,000 in just one morning? Chen Hao looked at his 5 friends, who were still in a state of shock and petrification, smiled slightly, wiped his mouth with a tissue, and said, "Now, I shouldn't have to worry about my studies anymore, right?"
Zhang Shuiao, Dong Letian, Baiyu, Fan Xing, and Tian Xingyue shook their heads almost in unison, mechanically, their faces still showing a dazed expression.
"No. I'm not worried anymore," Dong Letian murmured.
"With your brain, you probably don't even remember things as well as the professor. What are you worried about?" Baiyu took a deep breath, trying to accept this reality, and said with a wry smile, "Now I'm starting to wonder, are you the teacher or are we the students?" Zhang Shuiao looked at Chen Hao with a complex expression, a mixture of pride, shock, and an indescribable emotion. At this moment, Dong Letian seemed to suddenly remember something, his eyes lit up, and he leaned closer to Chen Hao, his gossip-loving spirit reignited. "Oh right, Haozi. I was so focused on how shocked you were by your recitation that I almost forgot about the important matter. How's that stock you have, Starshine Entertainment? How much have you made yet?" His reminder immediately drew the attention of the others back to the present. "That's right. Chen Hao invested 1.3 million yuan and even leveraged it 20 times to short that stock." Zhang Shuiao immediately looked at Chen Hao, while Tian Xingyue, Baiyu, and Fan Xing eagerly awaited the answer. The 150,000 yuan profit they made that morning had already shocked them. Now, 2 or 3 hours have passed, and they wonder how things are going. Under the expectant gazes of everyone, Chen Hao calmly took out his phone again, unlocked it, and opened the securities app.
The moment the account interface loads and displays real-time earnings. 301,000? Oh my god. It's only been a morning?
Another collective gasp filled the private room. The floating profit column clearly shows, plus 310,105.18 yuan. Since they last saw 150,000, it has more than doubled. Total profit reached 310,000. I'm so excited. Dong Letian stood up abruptly, his face flushed red, pointing at Chen Hao's phone, stammering. 301,000. Haozi. You're a fucking stock market genius reincarnated. You made money faster than a printing press. Baiyu completely lost his composure, forgetting to adjust his glasses, and just stared blankly at the number, muttering. 1,300,000 in capital, all in one morning, and short selling at that, the judgment, the timing, it's divine skill.
Fan Xing exaggeratedly grabbed Chen Hao's arm, his face full of admiration. "Brother Hao. Stock god. From now on, I'll follow you. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Please carry me." Tian Xingyue clutched her chest, feeling her heart couldn't take the shock. She looked at Chen Hao as if he were an alien. "Chen Hao, you're amazing." Zhang Shuiao breathed a long sigh of relief, finally able to relax completely, followed by immense joy and pride. Looking at the boy beside her who had created a miracle, a bright smile bloomed on her face, and all her previous worries vanished. She picked up the drink glass from the table, looked at Chen Hao, and said sincerely, "Chen Hao, congratulations." Yes. Congratulations, Haozi." Dong Letian also realized what was happening and quickly picked up his cup. Baiyu, Fan Xing, and Tian Xingyue also raised their glasses. "Congratulations, Chen Hao. Brother Hao is awesome. Congratulations." The 6 glasses clinked together, making a crisp sound, filling the private room with a joyful and excited atmosphere. Although Chen Hao was the one who made the money, they, as his friends, were proud of him and genuinely happy for him. After lunch, the group of 6 returned to school with varying feelings. Dong Letian, Baiyu, Fan Xing, and Tian Xingyue walked ahead, excitedly discussing Chen Hao's feats of reciting texts and trading stocks, occasionally bursting into exclamations and laughter. Chen Hao and Zhang Shuiao deliberately lagged behind a few steps, holding hands as they walked at the back. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns of light on the two of them. Zhang Shuiao lowered her head, looking at their tightly clasped hands. After a moment of silence, she suddenly spoke softly, "Chen Hao, you've changed." Upon hearing this, Chen Hao was slightly taken aback, turned to look at her, and smiled, "I haven't changed. I'm still me, Chen Hao." "No, you've changed.
Zhang Shuiao raised her head and looked intently into his eyes. In the past, although you were also excellent and hardworking, and a top student, you were still within the range that everyone could understand. But now she paused, as if searching for the right words. You have become too amazing. It's so impressive, it's almost unbelievable. Whether it's stock trading or your astonishing typing speed and memory, these are all beyond the realm of common sense. Sometimes I feel like I don't even recognize you anymore. Her tone carried a hint of confusion and barely perceptible unease. Shen Hao could sense the emotion in her words. He stopped, turned around, placed his hands on Zhang Shuiao's shoulders, looked directly at her with clear and firm eyes, and spoke with utmost seriousness. Shuiao, listen to me. No matter what happens to me, no matter how powerful I seem, or what the future holds, one thing will never change. He tightened his grip on her hand and said, word by word, that is my heart for you. I love you, and that will never change. Not now, and not in the future. His words were not flowery, but they carried a heavy weight, like a vow, striking directly into Zhang Shuiao's heart. Zhang Shuiao stared blankly into his sincere and firm eyes, at her own reflection clearly in his eyes. The slight unease and confusion in her heart were instantly washed away by a huge wave of emotion. A warm current flowed through my body, my nose felt a little sore, and my eyes were slightly moist. She nodded vigorously, a happy and relieved smile on her face, and gripped Shen Hao's hand tightly in return. Yes. I believe you. Hey. We're here. Be mindful of your surroundings. Dong Lishan's loud, mischievous voice came from the front. Exactly. It's broad daylight, stop being so mushy. Fan Xing chimed in. Hurry up, we've arrived at the girls' dormitory, we need to go up. Tian Xinyue shouted with a smile. Shen Hao and Zhang Shuiao then came to their senses and looked up to see that they had indeed arrived at the entrance of the girls' dormitory area. Many girls were walking around them, all looking at the couple with kind smiles. Both of them let go of each other's hands, feeling a little embarrassed. Then I'll go up, Zhang Shuiao said softly, her cheeks slightly flushed. Okay, get some rest. Chen Hao nodded. Zhang Shuiao gave Chen Hao another deep look before turning around and walking into the dormitory building with Tian Xinyue. Chen Hao watched her figure disappear into the corridor before heading towards the boys' dormitory with his 3 roommates who were waiting nearby, exchanging knowing glances. Back in dormitory 510, Dong Letian and the others were still excitedly discussing what had happened that day, clamoring for Chen Hao to treat them to a meal. Chen Hao smiled and made a few perfunctory remarks, then eagerly took out his somewhat old laptop. Although the configuration is average and the performance is outdated, it is still sufficient for some basic code compilation and debugging. He connected to the dormitory's Wi-Fi and then used WeChat File Transfer Assistant to transfer the core code of the Function Autochess game that he had written on his phone that morning to his computer. Next, he opened the professional development environment, imported the code, and began compiling. With his master-level computer skills, the process of debugging code went exceptionally smoothly. Some compatibility issues and potential bugs that might take ordinary programmers hours or even days to solve are as bright as a beacon in the night in his eyes. With a few keystrokes on the keyboard, the problem is solved. In less than half an hour, the entire game project was compiled successfully, all preset functions tested normally, and it ran smoothly. Chen Hao looked at the beta version of Function Autochess running on the computer screen. Although the interface was still relatively simple, the core gameplay was already complete. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. Without the slightest hesitation, he immediately logged into the developer backends of Steam and WeGame, 2 well-known global and domestic game platforms. Fill in the game information, upload the game package, set the price. He set a very affordable early access price, and submit for review. The series of operations were performed smoothly and efficiently. After seeing the messages "submission successful, awaiting review" appear on the screen, Chen Hao leaned back in his chair and let out a long sigh of relief. We've finally taken the first step and made it out. Next, we just have to wait for the market to test it. He stared at the computer screen, his eyes filled with anticipation. The stock market is his short-term cash cow, but this Function Autochess may become the first true cornerstone of his business empire. Chapter 20. Howzy, this game is so addictive, I just can't stop playing. Chen Hao had just finished uploading the game and stretched when he noticed that Dong Letian, Baiyu, and Fan Xing had somehow surrounded him, their 6 eyes curiously staring at his computer screen. Howzy, you're done already? What game did you upload? Dong Letian couldn't help but ask first, his face full of curiosity. Chen Hao nodded, pointing to the game icon on the screen. Function Autochess, the one I told you about this morning. Holy crap!
It's really done? So fast? Fan Xing exclaimed in surprise. Quick, send it to us so we can play with it. Let us experience Brother Hao's masterpiece.
Although Bai Yu didn't say anything, his eyes were full of anticipation. Seeing his roommate's interest, Chen Hao was also quite pleased and readily agreed, "Sure, I'll pack it up and send it to you right away." He skillfully shared the game installation package with his 3 roommates via the local area network. The 3 of them immediately ran back to their computers and started downloading and installing. The installation process was quick. Within minutes, the game startup sound effect rang out on all 3 computers. "I'll go in and take a look," Don Letian shouted, and was the first to open the game. At first, the 3 of them were just there to support their brother and let's have some fun. But as the game's tutorial ended, they gradually figured out how to play function auto chess. Recruit various gods and demons from the investiture of the gods as chess pieces, combine factions and class synergies, and engage in automatic battles through strategic formations. Wow! This Neza deals pretty high damage. Holy crap! Wen Zhong's ability to control the situation is amazing. Ah, I've completed the 3 Pure 1 synergy. My Taoist magic damage is doubled. Latte, don't block my cards. Who blocked your hand? You're just too slow. Soon, the dormitory was filled with the sounds of the 3 of them shouting and yelling. They had originally agreed that it was just a trial experience, but they all became completely engrossed in the game, their eyes glued to the screen, their fingers clicking away on the mouse and keyboard, utterly absorbed in the battle of gods in the world of function. "Howsy? You're awesome." Dom Letian took a moment to look up, gave Chen Hao a thumbs up, his face beaming with barely suppressed excitement. "This game is really fun. It's quite strategic, with a bit of luck involved, making it incredibly addictive." Bai Yu also pushed up his glasses and gave a rare high evaluation. "Chen Hao is indeed amazing. The core gameplay is well developed and the balance is also quite good. Although the interface and art assets look a bit rudimentary, it is already excellent for the first version. I can't believe you did this all by yourself in such a short time." Fan Xing excitedly slammed his fist on the table. "Brother Hao! This is amazing. This game is definitely going to be great. I think it's more interesting than many similar games I've played." Hearing his roommate's heartfelt praise, Chen Hao felt a surge of pride, but he maintained a humble demeanor on the surface. "I'm glad you like it. It's just a preliminary version, and there are still many areas for improvement." After a busy morning of trading stocks and writing code, Chen Hao felt somewhat exhausted. Seeing his 3 roommates having a great time, he yawned and said, "You guys keep playing, I'm a little sleepy, I'm going to take a nap." Go to sleep, go to sleep." Don Letian waved his hand without turning his head, his eyes still fixed on the battle on the screen. Chen Hao climbed into bed and quickly fell asleep. Chen Hao didn't know how long he had slept, but he woke up groggily, rubbed his eyes, and looked down. Dong Letian, Bai Yu, and Fan Xing were still in the same position he had been in before going to sleep, sitting intently in front of the computer, with the sounds of the mouse and keyboard and excited shouts filling the air. Chen Hao was a little surprised. He checked the time on his phone and realized he had been taking a nap for more than an hour. "Don't you take a nap?" he couldn't help but ask. "A nap? There's no time for a nap." Don Letian abruptly turned his head, his eyes bloodshot, but his spirits unusually high. "Howsy, this game is so addictive. I can't stop playing. The 3 of us are fighting each other, and we're all getting desperate from losing." Bai Yu rubbed his sore eyes and said with a wry smile, "It's really captivating, one game after another, time flies by." Fan Xing exclaimed, "Brother Hao, hurry up and update the version. Add more heroes and levels. I can't get enough of playing." Chen Hao was both surprised and delighted to see his 3 roommates so engrossed in their activities. He originally just wanted to give it a try, but he never expected that the game he casually created would have such a powerful effect, making his 3 well-informed and wealthy roommates so fascinated and obsessed. This undoubtedly gave him a shot in the arm, filling him with confidence in the future of function auto chess. He nimbly climbed out of bed and sat down in front of the computer. With anticipation in his heart, he first logged into the developer backend of the WeGame platform. The moment the background data was loaded, Chen Hao's eyes widened slightly. Game name, Function Auto Chess Beta. Price, 19 renminbi. Total downloads, 1157. Estimated income, 20,083 yuan after deducting platform commission. More than 20,000? Chen Hao's heart skipped a beat, and he could hardly believe it. How long has it been uploading? More than 1,000 people have already paid to download it?
And this was done with almost no publicity.
Suppressing his excitement, he immediately logged into the international version of Steam's developer backend. The numbers here also surprised him.
Game name, Function Auto Chess Beta. Price, $9. Total downloads, 941. Estimated revenue, $7,659 after platform share. 941 downloads, $7,659.
At the current exchange rate, that's equivalent to over 50,000 renminbi. Although the number of downloads is less than that of the Wii game platform, the price per download is higher, resulting in higher total revenue. Combined across the two platforms, in just a few hours, after deducting platform commissions, the net income exceeded 70,000 renminbi.
This is how you make money? And they made quite a bit of money.
Looking at the real numbers on the backstage, Chen Hao felt like he was dreaming. He wrote this game mainly to test his ideas and abilities, and incidentally to open up a new source of income, but he never expected the returns to come so quickly and so intensely. He took a deep breath to calm his agitated emotions, and then opened the player comments sections and community discussion forums on both platforms.
It's fun.
The investiture of the gods theme is very immersive, and the auto chess gameplay is also very addictive.
The author is awesome. This game is so much fun.
The graphics are a bit rough and the UI is a bit rudimentary. I hope it can be optimized in the future.
There aren't enough levels.
I finished it so quickly, it's not enough. Please update. We suggest adding more deities and synergy combinations to enrich the strategic gameplay.
Where are the monetization points? I can't even find the way to support the author. Laughs.
The balance still needs adjustment. A certain character feels a bit overpowered. The comments were mostly positive and encouraging, with many players expressing their approval of the core gameplay. They also offered some constructive suggestions, mainly focusing on issues such as the rough UI, limited game content levels, characters, and the need for fine-tuning the game's balance. Seeing these enthusiastic and expectant comments, Chen Hao felt a surge of excitement in his heart. He realized that the game Function Auto Chess was not just a spur-of-the-moment project, it truly possessed enormous potential and market demand. The players' approval and suggestions pointed him in the right direction for the next step. Optimize, expand, Chen Hao murmured to himself, his eyes growing brighter and brighter. He decided that he would devote more time and energy to carefully consider the feedback from players and comprehensively optimize and expand the content of Function Auto Chess. He wants to make this game a truly high-quality product that can be continuously operated and loved by more players. This is not just about making money, but also about realizing his value as a creator. Seeing his own creations recognized and loved by others brings him far more satisfaction and excitement than making money in the stock market.
Chapter 21. While taking a nap, I earned over 70,000 from the game.
Fan Xing played several rounds of the game and felt his eyes getting sore and his neck getting stiff. He stood up, stretched, moved his arms and legs, and then picked up the water glass on the table and gulped down several large mouthfuls. He put down his water glass and noticed that Chen Hao was sitting in front of the computer, his fingers sliding on the touchpad, staring intently at the screen, seemingly not playing a game. Curious, he leaned closer, gripping the back of Chen Hao's chair, and asked, "Haozi, what are you looking at?"
Did the stocks go up again?
Chen Hao didn't even look up, and casually replied, "No, I'm checking the game's back-end data."
The game's back-end? Fan Xing's interest was piqued. Is that the Function Auto Chess game you uploaded? How's it going? Has anyone downloaded it? Have you made any money?
Chen Hao had just finished reviewing the last data point and was feeling delighted with this unexpected gain, so he said directly,
"Yes, there's been some profit."
The two platforms combined bring in about 70,000 yuan.
70,000?
Fan Xing's voice instantly rose 8 octaves, his eyes widened like saucers, and his voice trembled with shock.
How much did you say? More than 70,000? His shout was like a bomb dropped into the peaceful dormitory.
Dong Letian and Bai Yu, who were engrossed in the game, were startled by the sudden exclamation and almost threw their mouse away.
Damn it! Fan Xing, what are you yelling about? You scared the hell out of me. Dong Letian complained, turning his head away.
Bai Yu frowned, pushed up his glasses, and looked at Fan Xing. What's wrong? Fan Xing pointed at Chen Hao, so excited he was incoherent. Money, money.
Haozi's game. He earned over 70,000.
In the short time we were playing the game, he took a nap and earned over 70,000.
What? More than 70,000?
Dong Letian and Baiyu were also stunned for a moment, their expressions instantly changing from annoyance at being disturbed to extreme shock. Dong Letian suddenly jumped up from his chair, rushed to Chen Hao's side, and pressed his head against the screen. Looking at the data in the backend that he didn't quite understand but which was very intuitive, he hissed in surprise.
My goodness, it really is over 70,000. Howsy? You're really possessed by the god of wealth, aren't you? Making a fortune in stocks, and now you can just write a game and sit back and collect money?
Baiyu also walked over, looking at the numbers on the screen with disbelief written all over his face.
It's only been uploaded for a few hours?
And it already has such a high conversion rate of paid users.
Chen Hao, your game, its potential is probably greater than we imagined.
Dong Letian patted Chen Hao's shoulder hard, his voice filled with envy and admiration. Awesome.
Absolutely awesome. Howsy, from now on I'll follow you. If you point east, I'll never go west.
Fan Xing nodded vigorously beside him. After the initial shock and envy, Dong Letian suddenly stroked his chin and sighed dramatically. Sigh, it seems we need to reflect on ourselves.
We're both in our dorms in front of the computer, but Howsy is creating wealth, while what about us? All we know is spending and having fun. What a difference.
Baiyu also adjusted his glasses and said seriously, indeed, we should reflect deeply on this. We waste precious time on virtual entertainment, while Chen Hao uses that time to create real value. Fan Xing jokingly put his hands together and said, Ba, good, this humble monk understands. I will quit the game and follow in Brother Hao's footsteps.
However, this deep reflection lasted less than 3 minutes. Howsy, when will the new version be released? I think it would be good to shorten Wen Zhong's skill cooldown time a little.
Dong Letian rubbed his hands together, then sat back down in front of his computer, his eyes fixed on the screen again. I think the trigger conditions for the 3 Pure Ones bond could be optimized. It's a bit difficult to achieve them now. Baiyu silently returned to his seat and picked up the mouse. Wait until I finish this round. I'm sure I can get a chicken dinner this time. Fan Xing completely forgot about his earlier epiphany and threw himself back into the battle. Chen Hao looked at his 3 lively roommates and shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He checked the time. There was still about an hour until his only class in the afternoon. Not wanting to waste this time, he sat up straight again, ready to start optimizing the game. He first opened the game's character artwork and UI files. In previous versions, in pursuit of speed, he put very little effort into the art. The characters were simply line drawings with color, and the interface was rather rough. Now that he has revenue and player feedback, he decided to start by optimizing the art style. He opened the drawing software and began to try adjusting the color scheme of a character, refining the lines, and adding lighting effects to make the character look more three-dimensional and exquisite. At the same time, he also began to redesign the layout and elements of the game's main interface to make it look more beautiful and more in line with the aesthetics of modern players. As he focused on optimizing the icon design of a button, a notification sounded in his mind. Ding! Host detected performing artistic tasks optimizing game interface and character appearance. Congratulations! You have accumulated 115 graphic designer experience points. Ding! Triggered a 10,000x return effect. You will receive a 111x experience bonus this time. Refund calculation, 115 points 111 times equals 12,765 experience points. Congratulations! Your graphic designer skill experience points are full, and your level has increased. Current graphic designer skill level, Master 12765, 100000. A vast and profound body of professional knowledge about color theory, composition techniques, the use of light and shadow, user interface design principles, and so on, flooded into Chen Hao's mind like a sudden awakening. His previous designs, based on his computer skills and a bit of aesthetic sense, now appear incredibly naive and crude. Master-level graphic design skills. Chen Hao was overjoyed. This meant that his art skills had instantly leaped to the top level in the industry, surpassing the vast majority of professional game artists. He felt as if his eyes had become the most sophisticated scanner, his perception of color, proportion, and detail had improved by countless levels. What he initially found quite pleasing to the eye now appears to be riddled with problems in his eyes. Without pausing, he immediately applied his newly acquired master-level graphic design skills to work on the optimization process with greater efficiency and professionalism. He redrawn the character illustrations, designed more refined icons, and adjusted the spacing and color scheme of interface elements. As he skillfully and precisely executed the operation, the notification sound rang out again. Ding! Host detected performing artistic tasks optimizing game interface and character appearance.
Congratulations!
You have accumulated 109 graphic designer experience points.
Ding!
Triggered a 10,000x return effect.
You have received a 999x experience bonus. Refund calculation: 109 points 999 times equals 108,891 experience points. Congratulations! Your graphic designer skill experience points are full, and your level has increased.
Current graphic designer skill level, Master 121,656 1 million.
A 999x critical hit. Over 100,000 experience points. Graphic design skills have reached the master level.
Chen Hao felt as if his brain had transformed into a top-of-the-line graphics workstation, reaching an unbelievable level of understanding and creativity in visual art. He is now even confident that he can independently complete the core art design of an animated film or a AAA blockbuster. The world's top art masters. He was filled with immense joy and confidence. He stared at the game assets being optimized on the screen, his eyes becoming incredibly sharp and focused. With master-level art design skills, he has absolute confidence that he can optimize the interface and character images of Function Auto Chess to a level that can rival or even surpass most similar games on the market.
This is not just a patchwork, it will be a complete visual upgrade. Chapter 22: The three roommates played Chen Hao's game day and night.
With class time fast approaching, Chen Hao saved the half-finished game files, shut down his computer, and called out to his three roommates who were still engrossed in the game.
Hey, stop playing around, it's time to go to class. Huh? So fast? Dong Letian didn't even turn his head, his fingers still clicking frantically on the mouse. Wait until I finish this game. I'll win right away.
That's right, just a sliver of health left. Fan Xing stared intently at the screen. Baiyu showed more self-control, although somewhat reluctant. He exited the game and began shutting down his computer.
Lutian, Fan Xing, don't keep Chen Hao waiting for us. Urged on by Baiyu and watched by Chen Hao, Dong Letian and Fan Xing reluctantly and with sighs left the game, muttering what a pity and we almost turned the game around.
The four of them shut down their computers, left the dormitory together, and headed towards the large classroom where they would have their afternoon classes. On the way, the three roommates were still excited and were still discussing Function Auto Chess. I think Xiao Gongming, the god of wealth, could have even stronger skills since he is in charge of money.
Dong Letian exclaimed.
Baiyu pushed up his glasses and analyzed rationally. I think the intensity is just right now any stronger and it would disrupt the balance. However, a special synergy related to gold coins could be added, such as triggering an additional effect when the number of gold coins on the field exceeds a certain amount.
Fan Xing then made a request to the art team. Brother Hao, could you draw the fairy sisters in the game a little prettier?
The current character art is much better than the original, but it feels like it could be even more refined. Chen Hao listened with a smile as they offered their suggestions, finding many of their ideas quite interesting. For example, he silently kept in mind the special bond that Baiyu mentioned, as well as Fan Xing's requirements for art. He had just upgraded his art skills, and planned to consider adopting them in subsequent optimized versions.
As they were walking, they ran into Zhang Shuiao and Tian Xinyue, who were also on their way to the classroom.
Upon seeing them, Fan Xing immediately rushed forward excitedly, as if she had found new people to share with, and couldn't wait to announce.
Zhang Shuiao. Tian Xinyue. I have great news for you. The game Haozi wrote has already earned over 70,000 yuan. More than 70,000? Zhang Shuiao and Tian Xinyue stopped in their tracks at the same time, their faces showing shock.
Zhang Shuiao opened her beautiful eyes wide and looked at Chen Hao, as if she wanted to get confirmation from him. Although she knew Chen Hao was developing games and believed in his abilities, she didn't expect to see profits so quickly, and such a large sum of money at that.
Fan Xing, you're wrong. Dong Letian corrected him from the side. The figure of over 70,000 was when Haozi had just woken up from his afternoon nap. Now more than an hour has passed, and given the momentum of this game, it must have increased by quite a bit. Haozi, quick, check how much it is now. Let's shock those two beauties too. Baiyu pushed up his glasses and looked at Chen Hao. Yeah, Chen Hao, let's take a look at the latest data. We're curious too.
Under the expectant gazes of everyone, Chen Hao smiled, took out his phone, and logged into the developer backends of Steam and WeGame respectively. He quickly glanced at the numbers and did some mental calculations, then looked up and announced a number. The combined net income from both platforms, after deducting platform commissions, is currently a little over 130,000 yuan.
Over 130,000? Oh my god. How long has it been?
This time, not only Zhang Shuiao and Tian Xinhua, but also Dong Letian, Bai Yu, and Fan Xing, who had already been shocked once, were once again astonished by this rapidly increasing number. Although they all come from well-off families and tens of thousands of yuan is not a huge sum for them personally, they are still students who rely solely on their families for money and have no income of their own. Chen Hao not only earns money through his own abilities, but the speed at which he does so is frighteningly fast. 130,000 in just a few hours. This is far more than the monthly income of many urban white-collar workers. Howsy? You really leave me speechless. Dong Letian patted Chen Hao's shoulder hard, his face full of genuine admiration. Bai Yu also exclaimed, Chen Hao, your money-making ability is terrifying.
Fan Xing immediately transformed into a devoted fanboy. Brother Hao. From now on, you're my idol.
Please take care of me. Zhang Shuiao looked at Chen Hao, her eyes filled with pride and a hint of joy at being honored. Tian Xinhua looked on incredulously, glancing at Chen Hao and then at Zhang Shuiao, before whispering to Zhang Shuiao.
Shuiao, you really got the perfect boyfriend. Amidst laughter and conversation, the group entered the large classroom where afternoon classes were held.
This was a large class held by several classes together, and the classroom was already quite full. As usual, they chose to sit in the back row. Dong Letian, Bai Yu, and Fan Xing hadn't taken a nap at noon and had been playing games intensely for several hours, so they were mentally exhausted. As soon as their bottoms touched the chairs, almost simultaneously, they tilted their heads to the side and fell fast asleep on their desks, soon emitting soft snores. Chen Hao and Zhang Shuiao sat together, while Tian Xinhua sat on Zhang Shuiao's other side. Zhang Shuiao looked at the three boys beside her who had instantly fallen asleep, feeling both amused and curious.
She whispered to Chen Hao. Why are those three going to sleep as soon as they came in? Didn't they sleep well last night? Tian Xinhua also came over and whispered, yeah, look how sleepy they are.
Chen Hao looked at his three roommates who were sleeping soundly, smiled helplessly, and explained, they didn't sleep well last night, they didn't sleep at all at noon. From the time I took my afternoon nap until I woke up, the three of them never left the computer. They were all playing my game, Function Auto Chess. They were so engrossed in it that they skipped their afternoon nap.
Ha? You've been playing the whole time? You didn't even take a nap? Zhang Shuiao and Tian Xinhua both looked surprised. Tian Xinhua looked at Chen Hao in disbelief. Chen Hao, is this game you created really that fun? Not only will it earn you over 130,000, but it will also keep Dong Letian and the other two playing non-stop, neglecting sleep and meals?
She's a young person too, and has played quite a few games, but it's rare to see a roommate so engrossed in a game that they skip their lunch break. Zhang Shuiao also looked at Chen Hao, her eyes filled with inquiry and curiosity. She realized she knew far too little about her boyfriend. He was like an endless treasure trove, always ready to bring her new surprises or rather, shocks.
Tian Xinhua was itching to play and said to Chen Hao, can you send me that game too? Let me see what kind of amazing game is so captivating. Chen Hao shook his head and explained, I'm currently optimizing the game.
The interface and character designs are being redesigned, so this version is rather rough.
Once I've finished optimizing it, I'll make a better version and send it to you to play.
I heard the game is still being optimized, and Chen Hao promised to provide a better version.
Although Tian Xinhua was a little disappointed, she was mostly looking forward to it. It's a deal. Send it to me first once it's optimized.
No problem, Chen Hao agreed with a smile. Listening to Chen Hao's confident and composed profile, Zhang Shuiao felt a strong sense of curiosity and anticipation for the game he had created himself. She was eager to see what this game, which allowed Chen Hao to make money and captivated her roommates so much, was really like.
Chapter 23 First Epic Skill.
The class bell rang, and the teacher entered the classroom on time to begin the lesson. Zhang Shuiao and Tian Xinhua immediately composed themselves, took out their notebooks, and began to listen attentively. After experiencing the dual success of stock trading and game development, as well as the huge boost brought by the system, Chen Hao's mind was no longer on the classroom. His mind is now completely focused on how to optimize Function Auto Chess as quickly as possible and seize this rare momentum. He quietly took out his phone, turned down the brightness, and opened the code editor and drawing software again. Based on the suggestions from his three roommates that morning, as well as the player comments he had quickly browsed on the way, he began to work on optimizing the game. He first added several new game levels, designing more challenging enemy combinations and level mechanics. Then, he started writing code to implement the special bond idea that Bai Yu mentioned. When a player accumulates a certain amount of gold on the field, a powerful global buff effect can be triggered. His fingers danced across the virtual keyboard, his master-level typing skills making him incredibly efficient at inputting code. In his mind, the combination of master-level computer skills and master-level graphic design skills allowed him to achieve a seamless understanding of code logic and visual presentation. He focused on writing code for about 15 minutes, and when he finished the event trigger code for a new level, a notification sounded. Ding! Host detected typing practice. Congratulations! You have accumulated 20 typing experience points. Ding! Triggered a 10,000x return effect. You have received a 999x experience bonus. Refund calculation: 20 points 999 is equal to 19,980 experience points. Current typing skill experience: Grandmaster level 34,384 1 million. Another nearly 20,000 experience points gained. Shenhao was slightly pleased, but not too surprised. After all, his typing skills had reached the master level, and the experience required had increased dramatically. He continued to dedicate himself to coding, optimizing the underlying algorithm, adding new character skill logic, and fixing some potential bugs. He was completely immersed in the pleasure of creation. 20 minutes later, when he successfully debugged the core code module of the Gold Coin Special Bond and perfectly integrated it into the game system, a series of even more shocking prompts exploded in his mind. Ding! Host detected engaging in computer practice writing and optimizing game code. Congratulations! You have accumulated 158 computer experience points. Ding! Triggered a 10,000x return effect. You have received a critical experience return of 6,666 times. Refund calculation: 158.6666 times equals 1,053,228 experience points. Congratulations! Your computer skill experience points are full, and your level has increased. Current computer skill level: Epic 1,175,158 10 million. 6666 times critical hit. 1.05 million experience points. Computer skills jumped directly from the master level, bridging the insurmountable gap of millions of experience points, and into the Epic Hall of Fame. Shenhao felt as if his brain had been instantly connected to an endless treasure trove of knowledge. Everything about computer science, from the lowest level of hardware logic and assembly instructions to the highest level of distributed systems and artificial intelligence algorithms. From ancient programming paradigms to cutting-edge quantum computing concepts. Countless vast and profound pieces of knowledge flooded into his consciousness like a vast galaxy, and were quickly understood, absorbed, and integrated. His thinking speed, logical analysis ability, and problem-solving ability have once again undergone a qualitative leap. If the Grandmaster level represents the top masters in an industry, then the Epic level represents the legendary level of establishing a school of thought and leading an era. Epic, the first epic skill. Shenhao felt an indescribable surge of joy and awe. The 6666 times critical hit return is practically a booster rocket tailor-made for him. He couldn't wait to test the power of the epic computer skills. He refocused his attention on the unfinished game code. This time, it felt completely different. Those complex game logics, algorithm optimizations, performance bottlenecks, became as simple and clear as 1 + 1 = 2 in his eyes. He didn't even need to think much. His fingers seemed to possess their own wisdom, typing out every line of code almost perfectly, with a clear structure and extreme efficiency, leaving virtually no room for optimization. Problems that might have required repeated debugging to solve were now easily resolved in his hands, and passed on the first try. Efficiency has increased by more than tenfold. In this near godlike coding state, Shenhao pushed forward the game's optimization work at an astonishing speed. Will new characters and skills be added? It comes naturally. Refactor the UI code to accommodate the new art assets? Easy. Optimize network synchronization and data storage? A piece of cake. For the entire class period, Shenhao was completely immersed in this ultimate experience of highly efficient creation. Just as the bell rang to signal the end of get out of class, he had just finished bringing a perfect end to the optimized version of Function Auto Chess. All planned new levels, features, code optimizations, and underlying refactoring have been completed. He breathed a sigh of relief, looked at the code file on his phone screen that represented the culmination of his hard work, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. Next, all I need to do is go back to my dorm, compile and debug the new version, and then I can release the update. He has absolute confidence that this version, with its epic skill optimizations, will bring players even greater surprises. He put away his phone and then noticed that Dong Letian, Baiyu, and Fan Xing next to him were still in the same position they were in during class, fast asleep on their desks, sleeping soundly.
You could even hear Dong Letian grinding his teeth slightly. Chen Hao shook his head with amusement and tapped the desk. Hey! It's dawn. Get up. The sun's already high in the sky.
The three were startled awake and groggily raised their heads, rubbing their sleepy eyes.
Ha! It's dawn?
Dong Letian yawned widely, almost drooling.
Howsy, have you finished writing the code?
Baiyu, still somewhat lucid, asked,
rubbing his numb arm.
Chen Hao nodded and said with a smile, it's all settled.
Let's go, dinner's on me tonight, order whatever you want.
Upon hearing treat and order whatever you like, Dong Letian instantly sobered up, his eyes lighting up as he instinctively tried to pay the bill. How could I let you treat?
I'll pay.
Chen Hao pressed down on his shoulder, his tone brooking no refusal.
You always treat me, but this time I have to come. Now that I'm making money, it's time to show my appreciation. If you don't agree, then I won't eat this meal.
Seeing Chen Hao's resolute attitude and the reasonableness of his words, Dong Letian scratched his head and had no choice but to agree.
All right, I'll give you a chance to show off this time. But next time it's my treat.
No problem, Chen Hao agreed with a smile.
At this moment, Zhang Xueya and Tian Xinyue also finished packing up their books.
Upon hearing that Chen Hao was going to treat everyone, Tian Xinyue immediately cheered, great.
Finally, I can get Chen Hao to treat me to a meal.
Zhang Xueyo also smiled at Chen Hao, her eyes gentle. So, Chen Hao, Zhang Xueyo, Tian Xinyue, and Dong Letian, Baiyu, and Fan Xing, who had just woken up and were still a little drowsy, left the classroom together, chatting and laughing, and headed out of the school, ready to enjoy a dinner sponsored by the newly minted little tycoon Chen Hao.
Chapter 24 Earning over $1 million in a single day?
Chen Hao and his group of 6 arrived at a well-regarded restaurant near the school and requested a small private room. After ordering, the group chatted while waiting for the food to arrive. Chen Hao didn't say much, he mostly just listened. As the other 5 chatted, the conversation naturally turned to Chen Hao. Hey Haozi, Dong Letian said, taking a sip of tea and clicking his tongue in amazement. You've changed completely this summer. You used to just bury yourself in your studies, but now you've quietly made such a big fuss.
Stock trading, game development, and you've mastered it all. Do you think you met some kind of reclusive master back in your hometown?
Baiyu pushed up his glasses and analyzed, to be more precise, it's a leapfrog improvement in cognitive ability and execution. Chen Hao already had a solid foundation, but now, his learning speed, judgment, and creativity have completely exceeded the normal range.
I'm very curious about the triggering mechanism for this change. Fan Xing looked on with admiration. Brother Hao, just tell me the truth, were you chosen by some future technology or alien civilization? The speed at which you make money is more outrageous than a money printing machine. Tian Xinyue joined in the fun, laughing as she said to Zhang Xueya, you'd better keep a close eye on your Chen Hao. He's so outstanding and makes so much money now, I don't know how many girls are eyeing him. Zhang Xueya blushed slightly at her words, gave Tian Xinyue a reproachful look, then her gaze softened as she looked at Chen Hao and said softly. He has indeed changed a lot to the point that I almost don't recognize him. His tone was filled with pride, but also with a hint of subtle complexity. Chen Hao felt a little embarrassed by their comments, so he touched his nose and laughed. There are no reclusive masters or alien civilizations. I'm just lucky. Good luck? Dong Lishan's eyes widened. Your luck is just too good. It's unbelievably good.
Just then, Tian Xinyue seemed to remember something, her eyes lit up, and she asked curiously.
By the way, Chen Hao, how's your stock? How much have you made? Her question immediately piqued everyone's curiosity. That's right, Haozi. Take a look. Dong Letian urged impatiently.
Baiyu and Fan Xing also stared intently at him.
Although Zhang Xueya didn't say anything, the expectation in her eyes was obvious.
Chen Hao smiled, took out his phone under everyone's gaze, unlocked it, and opened the securities app. When the account interface loaded and displayed the total profit figure, Chen Hao was slightly stunned. He was busy optimizing the game and didn't pay much attention, but he didn't expect the drop to be even more severe than he anticipated. He looked at the number and calmly announced, current profit. 1.16 million. 1,600,000? How many? Holy crap! The private room instantly erupted in chaos. Dong Letian jumped up from his chair, shoved his arm around Chen Hao's phone, stared intently at the screen, and counted on his fingers with trembling hands. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, millions. Really, 1,160,000? Holy crap. Howsy? You fucking earned over $1 million in one day? Bayu gasped, his composure completely crumbling, his voice becoming hoarse. Earning so much in one day, this can't be explained by luck, Chenhao, you. Fan Xing was so excited that he was incoherent, grabbing Chenhao's arm and shaking it. More than $1 million. Brother, how? In one day. I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. I'm completely convinced. Tian Xinyue covered her mouth in shock, looked at her phone, then at Chenhao, and then at Zhang Shuiao next to her, who was also in shock. She felt like her brain couldn't process it all. Earning over $1 million a day? This sounded like a complete fantasy to her. Zhang Shuiao's heart skipped a beat. She knew Chenhao had made money from stocks, but she didn't expect him to make so much. In just one day, the investment of 1.3 million yuan turned into a profit of 1.16 million yuan. This terrifying profitability made her feel dizzy. Looking at Chenhao's still calm profile, she was filled with immense shock and an indescribable feeling. After the initial shock, Dong Letian, panting heavily, suddenly remembered something and quickly asked, "Then, what about your game? How much revenue is it generating now?" All eyes were once again focused on them. Chenhao logged out of the securities app and then logged into the developer backends of Steam and WeGame to quickly perform some calculations. As for the games, the total profit from both platforms combined is currently around 230,000, Chenhao said. This figure seems less than the huge profits from stock trading, but considering the game has only been uploaded for a little over half a day and is not priced high, it is already an amazing achievement. 230,000? More than half a day? That's incredible. Although not as exaggerated as stock speculation, the fact that a game they wrote could generate a net income of 230,000 yuan in just over half a day was still beyond Dong Lishan's understanding. Dong Letian patted Chenhao's shoulder forcefully, his face displaying a complex expression of envy, admiration, and excitement. Howsy? No doubt about it. You're amazing. He gave him a thumbs up. From now on, you will be the role model for our dorm 510. No. You will be the role model for our entire Shanghai University. Bayu also looked deeply at Chenhao and sighed. Stock trading requires keen insight into financial markets, while game development requires strong technical implementation and product capabilities. Chenhao, your remarkable achievements in both of these seemingly unrelated fields are truly astounding. Fan Xing clenched his fists, his face beaming with a determined expression. From today onwards, I will take Brother Hao as my role model. I will study hard and strive to improve every day. I will try to earn some money for myself as soon as possible. Tian Xinyue mercilessly exposed him from the side. Come on, Fan Xing. I know you too well. You're only enthusiastic for 3 minutes at most. Tomorrow when I wake up, I promise I'll play games when I'm supposed to play and sleep when I'm supposed to sleep, completely forgetting what I said today. Fan Xing blushed at her words and retorted stubbornly, Who said that? I'm serious this time. Everyone was amused by his appearance, and the private room was filled with a joyful atmosphere. At this point, the waiter began serving the dishes. The table was filled with a variety of delicious and visually appealing dishes. Dong Letian, Bayu, and Fan Xing immediately poured themselves a full beer and raised their glasses together. Come on. Howsy? Congratulations. Double happiness. You've made a fortune in stocks and your game is a huge hit. Dong Lishan's voice boomed. Congratulations, Chenhao. Bayu and Fan Xing also shouted. Zhang Shuiao and Tian Xinyue also smiled and raised their drink cups. Chenhao, congratulations. Zhang Shuiao looked at Chenhao, her eyes filled with tenderness and pride. Congratulations on your fortune, Chenhao. Tian Xinyue said playfully. A warm feeling welled up in Chenhao's heart. He raised his glass and said sincerely, Thank you, brothers. Thank you, Shuiao and Xinyue. Cheers. Cheers. The 6 cups clinked together, creating a lively and warm atmosphere. The meal was exceptionally enjoyable. Chenhao's 3 roommates ate and drank to their heart's content, while continuing to express their endless admiration for Chenhao. After finishing the meal, Chenhao took the initiative to pay the bill. Stepping out of the restaurant, a gentle evening breeze was blowing. Chenhao looked at Zhang Shuiao beside him and longed to spend some time alone with her and talk to her. He then said to Dong Letian and the other 2.
Lu Tian, Bai Yu, Fan Xing, you three go back first. Shui Yao and I will take a walk outside.
Upon hearing this, Dong Letian immediately gave a knowing, mischievous grin, nudged Chen Hao with his elbow, and teased him in a low voice.
Oh? Taking a walk? Perhaps you're looking for a secluded spot to have a deeper conversation with our school beauty, Zhang? He. Bai Yu and Fan Xing were also winking and grinning mischievously on the side. Chen Hao gave Dong Letian a playful kick, laughing and cursing, "Get lost. Can't you think of anything healthy? Get the hell out of here." Zhang Xueya blushed as they spoke, and gently nudged Tian Xinyue, saying, "Xinyue, you should go back too." Tian Xinyue blinked, looked at Zhang Xueya meaningfully, and teased in a low voice, "Xueya, are you going back to the dorm tonight? Do you need me to leave the door open for you? Are you kidding me?"
Zhang Xueya lightly punched her, her ears turning bright red with embarrassment.
"Go back right now."
Tian Xinyue chuckled and then followed Dong Letian and the other two, who were still winking at each other, towards the school.
The noise subsided, leaving only Chen Hao and Zhang Xueya. Chen Hao naturally took Zhang Xueya's hand and said softly, "Let's take a walk." "Mum."
Zhang Xueya nodded gently, letting him lead her, and the two walked side by side toward a quiet little park nearby.
The gentle night cast long shadows of the two of them. Chapter 25: Registering a company, renting a house.
After walking a distance, Zhang Xueya quietly looked back to confirm that Tian Xinyue and Dong Letian had long since disappeared into the night, and there were no other pedestrians around. She breathed a sigh of relief, a shy blush spreading across her face. She tightened her grip on Chen Hao's arm even more intimately, pressing her soft, supple breasts tightly against his shoulder. Feeling the warmth and amazing touch from his arm, Chen Hao's heart skipped a beat, and his breath hitched slightly. He turned his head and looked at Zhang Xueya's beautiful profile in the moonlight, a feeling of indescribable satisfaction and protectiveness welling up inside him. "Chen Hao," Zhang Xueya gently rested her head on his shoulder, her voice soft.
"You don't have classes tomorrow morning, what are you planning to do?"
Chen Hao composed himself, thought for a moment, and said, "I plan to register a company tomorrow morning."
"Register a company?" Zhang Xueya looked up in surprise.
"Yes," Chen Hao nodded and explained, "it's specifically for operating Fengshan Auto Chess and other games that may be developed in the future. Having a legitimate company makes everything much easier, from recruiting staff and managing funds to subsequent marketing and promotion." If it were in the past, when Zhang Xueya heard Chen Hao say he wanted to start a company and make games, she would most likely have thought he was neglecting his duties and would definitely have tried to dissuade him. But after today's series of shocks, Chen Hao's terrifying memory proved that he wouldn't neglect his studies at all, and also demonstrated the astonishing fact that he had earned over 200,000 yuan from games in a short period of time. Her thinking has completely changed. She knew that Chen Hao was taking a different, but feasible, path.
"Yes, I support you."
Zhang Xueya leaned her head back on his shoulder and said firmly.
"It's definitely easier to get things done with a company. Is there anything I can help you with, like handling some paperwork or something?"
Hearing his girlfriend's unwavering support, Chen Hao felt a warmth in his heart and squeezed her hand. "Thank you for your support."
"No need for now.
I have a general understanding of the company registration process, it shouldn't be difficult.
If I need anything, I certainly won't hesitate to ask you."
"Okay," Zhang Xueya replied sweetly.
As they talked, they unknowingly walked to a bench hidden in the shade of a tree.
The park was quiet at night, with only the rustling of leaves in the breeze. "Sit down for a while," Chen Hao said softly. The two sat side by side on the bench. Zhang Xueya naturally linked arms with Chen Hao, resting her head on his shoulder, enjoying the rare tranquility and warmth. After a moment of silence, Chen Hao seemed to have made up his mind and said, "Xueya, there's something else I want to discuss with you."
"What is it?"
Zhang Xueya looked up at him curiously. "I'm planning to rent a place near the school," Chen Hao said.
"Rent a house?"
Zhang Xueya was stunned for a moment, her face instantly flushed, and her heart started beating faster. She lowered her head shyly, her voice barely audible. Why are you renting a place?" Chen Hao found her shy appearance extremely cute. He reached out and gently, with boundless tenderness, stroked her still flat stomach, his gaze tender yet firm as he looked into her eyes, his voice low and earnest. "Because our baby is here. I want to live with you so I can take care of you. Given your current situation, living in a dormitory is somewhat inconvenient. I want to provide you and your baby with a more comfortable and reassuring environment." His words were like a warm current, instantly touching the softest part of Zhang Xueyao's heart. She stared blankly at Chen Hao, at the undisguised concern and sense of responsibility in his eyes, and a huge wave of emotion surged over her, instantly overwhelming all her shyness and unease. My eyes felt slightly hot, and I had an urge to cry. He didn't just make verbal promises of responsibility, he took concrete actions, planning for her and their child's future step by step.
Chen Hao.
Zhang Shuiyao's voice trembled slightly. She reached out and placed her hand on the back of Chen Hao's hand, which was stroking her lower abdomen. Her eyes glistened with tears, yet radiated happiness.
You're so good to me.
Seeing her moved expression, Chen Hao felt a surge of affection. Zhang Shuiyao tilted her head back, slowly closed her eyes, her long eyelashes fluttering gently like butterfly wings, and her luscious lips, glistening in the hazy moonlight, radiated an alluring glow as she slightly raised them toward Chen Hao.
In this situation, no further words are needed.
Chen Hao looked at the alluring red lips so close to his face and felt a surge of heat in his heart. He quickly glanced around to make sure it was quiet and no one was there, then he lowered his head in gently, and then gradually deepened, kissed those two soft lips. Unlike the haste and panic on the roadside last time, this time, under the cover of the night without anyone disturbing them, the two were more engrossed. Between their intertwined lips, they conveyed their burning emotions and deep love.
Zhang Shuiyao responded awkwardly but bravely, her hands unconsciously wrapping around Chen Hao's neck. The moonlight was like water, the shadows of the trees swayed, and the two people on the bench were passionately kissing, as if the whole world had only consisted of each other. They didn't know how much time had passed, until they were both a little out of breath, before they reluctantly parted ways.
Zhang Shuiya's cheeks were flushed, her eyes sparkling, and she leaned shyly against Chen Hao's chest, breathing slightly heavily. Chen Hao held her in his arms, his heart filled with peace and happiness.
He checked the time on his phone. It was almost 10 p.m.
It's almost 10 o'clock, the dormitory building is about to close, we should go back.
Chen Hao reminded her softly, though reluctant, he couldn't let Zhang Shuiyao stay out late.
Mum. Zhang Shuiyao nodded obediently, got up from his arms, and tidied her slightly messy hair and clothes. The two held hands and left the quiet little park, heading towards the school. After escorting Zhang Shuiyao to the girls' dormitory building, Chen Hao watched her walk into the building, turning back every few steps until her figure completely disappeared in the lobby lights. Only then did he turn around and walk towards his own dormitory. The next morning, the sun shone brightly. Chen Hao got up early, washed up, and went to wait for Zhang Shuiyao downstairs at her dormitory. Not long after, Zhang Shuiyao came out of the dormitory building. She had clearly dressed up specially today, wearing a pale yellow knee-length dress that made her skin look even whiter and more translucent. She wore light makeup, and her long hair was draped smoothly over her shoulders. She looked radiant and charming, with an added touch of allure than usual. Chen Hao's eyes lit up, and he went up to her, sincerely praising, "Shuiya, you look so beautiful today." Hearing the praise, Zhang Shuiya felt a sweet warmth in her heart, and a shy blush rose to her face. She then playfully retorted, "Smooth talker." She naturally reached out and affectionately took Chen Hao's arm. "Let's go," Chen Hao said with a smile. "Good." The two of them nestled together as they walked out of the school. The fact that school beauty Zhang Shuiya appeared on campus so intimately, arm in arm with a boy, naturally attracted countless eyes. Many boys who saw this scene felt a mix of envy and jealousy, secretly marveling at how incredibly lucky this guy was to have won over their dream girl. Not far away, in a luxury sports car parked by the roadside, Su Kaiyang stared intently at Chen Hao and Zhang Shuiya as they walked intimately away from the school gate, his face grim. Looking at Zhang Shuiya's charming smile and seeing her snuggling up to Chen Hao without any reservations, Su Kaiyang felt like his lungs were about to explode with anger. He'd been chasing Zhang Shuiya for so long and hadn't even gotten a kind word from her. What made this poor country boy so special? Especially when he thought about how Chen Hao had broken his bank card in public, making him lose face, a surge of anger rushed to his head. A fierce glint flashed in his eyes as he gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white from the force. "Chen Hao, you just wait. If I don't teach you a lesson today, I'll change my name." He swore fiercely in his heart that he was already planning how to teach Chen Hao a lesson and let him know the consequences of offending him and coveting the woman he had his eye on. Chapter 26 Master Level Tai Chi. Since the nearest business administration department was a bit far away, and taking the bus or subway required transferring, which was quite troublesome, Chen Hao took out his phone to call a ride-hailing service. "Don't call a car," Zhang Shuiya gently pressed his hand and smiled. "I've already arranged a car, it should be here soon." Chen Hao was somewhat surprised, but still put away his phone. "You've already contacted a car?" Zhang Shuiya nodded without saying anything more. The two then stood by the roadside at the school gate and waited. As Chen Hao chatted casually with Zhang Shuiyao, his gaze inadvertently swept across a small park on the other side of the street. In the park, an elderly man dressed in a white exercise uniform was slowly practicing Tai Chi to the accompaniment of soothing music. The movements were fluid and graceful, like flowing water, and had a certain charm. Chen Hao looked at it for a while and found it quite interesting, so he took a few more glances. Just then, a familiar notification sound rang in his mind. Ding! Detected that the host is observing someone else practicing Tai Chi. Congratulations! You have successfully activated and acquired the Tai Chi skill. Current level, Beginner 0-100. Chen Hao was stunned for a moment, almost unable to react. Watching others practice Tai Chi. And you can actually learn a skill from it? This system is just too outrageous. It's like plucking feathers from a passing goose and leaving the skin behind when an animal leaves. No, it's about being able to snag a bargain just by looking at it. A surge of immense curiosity welled up within him. If I keep reading, will I gain experience points like reading a book or typing, or even trigger a critical hit bonus? This thought ignited a fire within him. While continuing to chat with Zhang Shuiyao and answering her questions, he secretly focused most of his attention on the old man practicing boxing opposite him, observing him more attentively. You know what, this old man's Tai Chi is really good. Every move is steady and powerful, with profound meaning, clearly showing that he has many years of experience. Just as Chen Hao was engrossed in watching and silently experiencing the relaxed and gentle artistic conception, a very eye-catching red luxury sports car silently glided up in front of them and came to a steady stop. Its sleek lines, low-slung body, and gleaming logo all screamed its high price tag, immediately attracting the attention of many students at the school gate. The car door opened, and a well-dressed, composed middle-aged man got out of the driver's seat, walked around the front of the car, came to Zhang Shuiyao, bowed slightly, and said respectfully, "Miss, your car has arrived." "Thank you, Uncle Lu, for your trouble," Zhang Shuiyao replied politely. The middle-aged man, referred to as Uncle Lu, smiled and shook his head, indicating that there was no need to be polite. He then naturally opened the driver's side door for Zhang Shuiyao. Zhang Shuiyao turned to Chen Hao, who was still somewhat dazed, and smiled, "Get in the car." After saying that, she bent down and got into the driver's seat. Looking at the obviously expensive luxury car and then at Zhang Shuiyao already sitting in the driver's seat, Chen Hao realized that Zhang Shuiyao had probably called the car from home. He hesitated for a moment, but under the watchful eyes of countless people around him, some envious and some inquisitive, he opened the passenger door and got in. Zhang Shuiyao skillfully fastened her seatbelt, adjusted the seat and rearview mirror, then started the engine. The sports car emitted a deep and pleasant roar, smoothly merging into the traffic and heading towards the industrial and commercial department. As soon as they left, a buzz of discussion arose at the school gate. Holy crap! Was that Zhang Shuiyao just now? Is her family that rich? Driving that kind of sports car? Who's that guy? The one sitting in the passenger seat? Who else could it be but Chen Hao, the one who got pursued by school beauty Zhang? Tisk, it's true what they say, comparisons are odious. He was good at studying, got the school beauty, and now it seems he's just living off a woman? Maybe Chen Hao himself is quite capable? What skills does he have? I think he's just lucky. He's good looking and that's all. He caught the eye of a rich girl. Various sour comments and speculations spread among the crowd. Many boys looked in the direction where the sports car disappeared, feeling a mix of emotions, including envy, jealousy, and resentment. Inside the car, Chen Hao had just fastened his seatbelt and settled into his seat when the notification sounded in his mind again. Ding! Detected that the host is continuously observing others practicing Tai Chi. Congratulations! You have accumulated 19 Tai Chi experience points. Ding! Triggered a 10,000x return effect. You have received a 999x experience bonus. Refund calculation, 19 points 999 is equal to 18,981 experience points. Congratulations! Your Tai Chi skill experience points are full, and your level has increased. Current Tai Chi skill level, Master 18781-100000. A vast amount of profound knowledge about Tai Chi Chuan's principles, moves, power generation techniques, practical applications, and even related breathing and health preservation methods flooded into Chen Hao's mind like a sudden awakening. At the same time, he felt that his body had undergone some subtle changes. It was as if those smooth and coherent movements were imprinted deep in his muscle memory, and a warm current was slowly flowing through his body along a specific route. Master level Tai Chi.
Chen Hao was overjoyed. This system is absolutely amazing. He just stood by the roadside and watched the old man practice boxing for a few minutes, and he actually gained a master-level martial arts skill. This means that he is no longer the weak scholar who couldn't even kill a chicken. Master-level Tai Chi has long transcended the scope of ordinary physical fitness and possesses extremely powerful combat capabilities. Every gesture they make contains powerful explosive force and ingenious defensive ability, far surpassing the elderly people who exercise in the park in the morning. This is such a wonderful surprise. It's like getting a self-defense skill for free. He suppressed his excitement and tried his best to keep his face calm. At that moment, Zhang Xueyao, who was driving, looked straight ahead and casually asked, "Chen Hao, have you decided on a name for the company?" Upon hearing this, Chen Hao turned to look at her, just about to say the name he had come up with. Ding! Host detected observing others performing driving operations. Congratulations! You have successfully activated and acquired the driving skill. Current level, Beginner 0100. Chen Hao. He watched Zhang Xueyao's fair hands gripping the steering wheel, her focused gaze occasionally glancing at the rearview mirror, and the skillful movements of her feet switching between the accelerator and brake. An absurd yet heart-pounding thought popped into his head. Wow! Zhang Xueyao has activated her driving skills after just a short while of driving? If I watch it a little longer, wouldn't I be able to learn to drive very quickly? This system, it's always surprising us. Chapter 27. The school beauty rented her villa to Chen Hao. Zhang Xueyao, who was driving, waited for a while, but when she didn't hear Chen Hao answer the question about the company name, she glanced at him with some confusion. Upon closer inspection, it was discovered that Chen Hao was staring intently at his hands gripping the steering wheel, his gaze somewhat unfocused, as if he were daydreaming. A little puzzled, she gripped the steering wheel firmly with one hand, and waved the other in front of Chen Hao's eyes, asking with concern. "Chen Hao? What's wrong? Why are you spacing out?" Chen Hao was startled awake by her movements and voice, and suddenly realized that he had been so focused on his driving skills and experience points that he had been so engrossed in them. He quickly smiled and covered it up, saying, "Oh? It's nothing, I just suddenly thought of something else and got distracted." As he spoke, his gaze remained fixed on Zhang Xueya's movements as she controlled the vehicle, continuing to observe. At the same time, he answered her earlier question, "I've already thought of a name for the company, it will be called Hao Xue Company. Hao Xue? Zhang Xueyao didn't immediately recognize the two characters and instinctively asked, "Which Hao? Which Xue?" Chen Hao looked at her with gentle eyes and explained clearly, "The Hao in Chen Hao, and the Xue in Zhang Xueya." Chen Hao is Hao Zhang Xueyao S Xue. Zhang Xueyao silently repeated it in her mind and instantly understood the meaning of the two words together. He took one character from each of his and her names to form the company name. This is not just a name, but a declaration, a symbol that firmly incorporates her into his future plans in life. An indescribable surge of emotion welled up in Zhang Xueyao's heart like a tidal wave, making her nose tingle and her eyes moist. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened unconsciously, her heart overflowing with sweetness, as if a honey pot had been spilled. He was telling her in this way that all his efforts and achievements were partly hers, and that his future was closely linked to hers. "What do you think of this name?" Chen Hao asked with a smile, looking at her slightly moved profile. Zhang Xueyao suppressed her excitement and shyness, staring straight ahead, pretending to focus on the road conditions, but her voice trembled slightly and sweetly. If you think it's good, then it's fine." Her heart was already filled with immense happiness, so she wouldn't have any objections at all. In this warm and sweet atmosphere, the pleasant notification sound rang in Chen Hao's mind again. Ding! Host detected continuously observing others performing driving operations. "Congratulations! You have accumulated 127 driving experience points. Ding! Triggered a 10,000x return effect. You have received a 666x experience bonus. Refund calculation, 127.666 is equal to 84,582 experience points. Congratulations! Your driving skill experience points are full, and your level has increased. Current driving skill level, Master 84,482 100,000. Boom! A wealth of professional knowledge and muscle memory about vehicle structure, driving skills, traffic rules, handling complex road conditions, and even some advanced drifting and track driving were imprinted into Chen Hao's consciousness and body like instinct. Master level driving skills. Chen Hao was overjoyed.
This means that although he has barely touched the steering wheel yet, his actual driving skills are already comparable to those of an experienced driver, and in some aspects such as emergency response and vehicle control precision, he is even comparable to a professional race car driver. Give him a car and he can immediately get the hang of it, and drive it fast and steadily. This system is practically a walking, all-purpose, quick learning machine for skills. As the two talked, the car quickly arrived at the industrial and commercial department. Chen Hao took out his ID card and other documents that he had prepared in advance, filled out the form according to the procedure, submitted the application, and registered Haoshua Technology Company, Limited. After the staff accepted the application, they were informed that it would take about 5 working days to review it. If approved, they could then proceed to the tax department to complete the subsequent procedures and have the official seal made. Things went fairly smoothly. As Zhang Shuya walked towards her parking spot after leaving the business administration department, she casually asked, "Chen Hao, have you decided what kind of apartment you want to rent?" Chen Hao had already considered this issue. He currently has over 1 million yuan in cash profits from stock trading and gaming. While it's not enough to buy a house in a place like Shanghai, it's more than enough to rent a decent place. He didn't want to make Zhang Shuya and the child feel wronged.